this is bad, bro. They're cheating. It's not, bro. It's not even the evening yet. They're already trying to cheat.
Can I get that slid in there? No.
That's bad, boys. That's real bad. He was never gonna win Philadelphia. Well, I don't know. And yeah, thoughts on a bomb threat in Washington? I think bomb threats are bad. Yeah, I think bomb threats are bad, and the people that do them should get in trouble. Yeah, that's that's my take on bomb threats. Yeah, yeah. L for bomb threats. Not so good, right?
I feel the same way.
I mean, a 10-year-old kid's gonna be a president, maybe, right?
Shouldn't be threatening those bombs.
Like, most people right now, he's ramping 62%. Oh my God. Yep, there you go. Oh boy, oh boy.
Is that true? Wait, is this real?
Refresh Twitter? Okay. All right, let me refresh Twitter real quick. I'll take a look at it.
Yep. That's what I've been doing. Man, I wish I had people to talk to. I ain't got nobody in my chat.
Uh-huh.
Yet. Who knows? The day is still young.
Damn, why does she...
One of the polling sites that is happening right now. This is live right here. This is some live coverage as we're taking a look right here. You're taking a live look from El Segundo, California, as folks are still casting their ballots. But now that we are close to those polls closing, I did want to just share with you when polls actually close on election
Why is this cut off?
On the left-hand side of your screen,
Why do I keep cutting everything off?
All eyes are on those battleground states, those 7 swing states. We're talking about Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Now, for the state of Georgia, polls are going to be closing at 7 p.m. Eastern time. For North Carolina, those polls are closing at 7:30, so half an hour later. And in Pennsylvania, those polls are going to be closing at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So we were talking with political analyst Richard Gordon, saying that he expects those first results to come from Kentucky and Indiana. That is because those polls close at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So
I see.
States that we are going to
it's because he's got the chat from their video going.
Georgia,
that's why it stretched it.
Virginia, Vermont, those are going to be at 7 p.m. along with some of these others, right? And then 7:30, of course, North Carolina, 8 p.m.
Where do you go? Take PP?
A massive number of states that are. Those polls are going to be closing, but I'm going to focus in on some of those key swing states. Michigan, those Eastern time counties, that is going to be happening, and Pennsylvania. So those are the swing states at 8 p.m. At 9 p.m. Eastern time, the swing states of Arizona, the central time counties of Michigan and Wisconsin, those are when the polls are going to be closing there. 10 p.m. Nevada. That is when the polls are going to be closing in the swing state of Nevada. 11 p.m. No swing states there. We're talking mostly, Western California, Washington,
gonna be a close
Oregon. Midnight.
I think.
Alaska and Hawaii.
I think that my side's got in the bag.
Right now. And also,
what are we talking about?
To note because
that's what I've been saying.
Yeah. Have
like, who cares?
Rules and regulations as to when they can actually start counting their votes. So states that do not allow counting to begin.
I want to see WWE. I want to see some
14 states
some punches thrown.
Washington, D.C. There are states that allow counting to begin today on Election Day, but can also do so before polls close. Those are 24 states. And then there are states that allow processing and counting to begin before Election Day. Those are 12 states. So if you're curious, Pennsylvania, we keep talking about Pennsylvania, the critical swing state of Pennsylvania. That state allows counting to begin on Election Day and can do so before polls close. So I did want to just recap that with you. What we're going to continue to do is we do have access to our Fox O&Os, and I did want to head to the swing state of Atlanta, as all eyes are also on Georgia. They have their Fox
swing state of Atlanta
right now. We're going to pivot to that and listen in.
She tried probably saying Georgia, but yeah.
Yeah, to put Atlanta. Atlanta, that is Georgia.
Around 8
It's all that matters. Atlanta votes.
The state of Atlanta. She just fucked up. It's not really that big of a deal.
We talked to one woman who watched it all unfold.
Yep.
State Representative Lydia Glaze says she drove right into Union City Police evacuating C.H. Gallant Elementary School after the bomb threat was discovered Tuesday. The state lawmaker says she was trying to drop off voters to cast their ballots. Election officials say it was a similar scene at the Itris Community Center on Lakeside Drive. Both locations were temporarily closed, evacuated, and a security sweep done.
This is shenanigans. The fact that we had 2 major voting precincts in one city with bomb threats is, for me, strongly concerning. I see it as a way to oppress the vote in this area. People were waiting in line.
100%.
People were inside ready to vote.
Yep.
And a lot of people concerned. Fulton County election officials tell us they were working on court orders to try
Well, I've been
to expand
seeing
the hours at those 2 polling
this election
precincts
interference stuff left and right.
That's a good
Well,
question.
mostly affecting the right.
All right, Angelique, we'll keep watching it. Thanks for that live report. Meantime, after history-making presidential campaigns, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are waiting anxiously along with millions of Americans.
And that is to find out who will be the next president of the United States. Fox's Rebecca Castor reports from Florida, where former President Trump is watching the results roll in tonight.
Oh, there he is.
Who we think's got it? Who we think's got it?
We're at the Palm Beach County Convention Center where the Trump campaign
I know media's been freaking out.
Night watch party, but the former president will be watching the returns come in from his home at Mar-a-Lago with a small group of.
I'm gonna try and refresh this shit because this audio is fucked up. Like, I don't know what's going on with the audio. It's annoying.
Optimistic that voters will put him back in the White House, but it will all come down to voter turnout today.
The country that I'm living in is not the country I was born into.
Maybe
the
I
only
don't
one
know.
who's
I'm trying to
America first is Donald Trump.
I voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. It's time for a change, moving forward in a better and uplifting way.
It's likely to be a long night as results slowly trickle in, and there's
I don't
a
know.
possibility that a
I don't know if it will be better.
declared before the night
Hopefully.
is over. Something Trump calls an outrage.
It should never happen. A thing like that should never happen. This election should be over.
With 19 electoral votes, all eyes will be on Pennsylvania tonight.
Right.
It's the state both candidates spent the most time and money in and see as a must-win.
The reality is whoever wins Pennsylvania is likely to be president.
Vice President Harris.
Yeah, that's why there's a lot of mishaps. Power going out.
Last-minute effort to get out the vote. She says Americans are ready for a fresh start.
Okay.
Frankly, I think people are exhausted with this spirit and this approach that's been about trying to divide people and have them turn and point fingers at each other. I think people are done with that.
When asked if he would accept the results of the election if he lost, former President Trump said if it's a, quote, fair election, he'll be the first to acknowledge it.
If
Tom,
it's fair.
Courtney, back to you guys.
Yeah,
Okay, so if
many
he
of us
wins.
just anxiously awaiting some results that we will be starting to get soon. Rebecca, thanks. On the
Or
other
if it's
side
an
of the aisle,
absolute
Vice President
blowout,
Harris and her supporters
then it's
today
undeniable.
looking to get out the vote.
In just a few hours, Harris supporters will gather at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Atlanta to watch the election returns. Fox 5's Deidre Dukes is there tonight with the Harris campaign.
After months of heavy campaigning, numerous visits by VP Harris and her surrogates, final preparations are underway for tonight's watch party here at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Atlanta.
I'm gonna see how I fix this with this fucking audio, man.
How much you want to bet if Trump
This
wins
shit's fucking annoying.
that Kamala's supporters and Kamala they're going to call
Wow,
There
Trump's
was no
65%.
So people are prepared, and
Damn.
I think hopefully this election will go smoothly.
Is this from a left-wing
And this
source
is
or
on
right-wing?
CNN.
Oh,
So let me
shit.
get Professor Kuznick in.
Yeah,
you know,
damn.
The contrast in both the candidates and their closing messages. Kamala Harris seems to have gone back to her original theme, which is of joy and hope and optimism. This whole joyful
Too little, too
warrior
late.
thing, we saw evidence of that in the last few days and last few of our rallies. In fact, I don't think she even mentioned Donald Trump by name, even though it was very obvious the choice as she laid it out before the American people. Trump, on the other hand, has been a bit negative. After all, I mean, he's running against the incumbent, and he's painted this picture of everything going bad and everything going to the dogs in America, and he's the guy to fix it. The question is, which of these two messages is resonant? And in that, I also want to ask, Trump doesn't seem to be making an attempt to reach out to those independents or people who've not made up their mind. He's more interested in charging up his base and ensuring that his base turns up today on election day more than reaching out to independents who may break away from voting for the Democratic candidate and instead vote for the Republican. Why is that?
This is going to be a turnout election. Trump figures that if he can turn out
I like this
all
guy's
of
name
his
is Professor
voters, he's going to win.
Oh, never mind.
But as the congressman said before, the Democrats have a much better ground game than the Republicans do. The Republicans have given their ground game over to Elon Musk, who put $75 million into this, and it seems to be floundering. The Democrats, on the other hand, have got people out there. I was talking to my students last night. They were going to North Carolina. They were going to Pennsylvania. So they are much more energized in that way. So I think that's going to break in the favor of the Democrats. But the point you were making is a very important one. Trump's message, as this campaign is nearing its end, has gotten darker and darker and darker. And so Kamala Harris is contrasting that by a much more upbeat, positive message. She talks about unifying America. She says she's going to be the president for all Americans, while Trump is talking about using the military, using the judicial system to
put people in jail,
lock up his enemies.
That's right.
So Kamala is lying,
she gets to office,
and Trump did not say that.
Have her to-do list to help the American people. When Trump gets to office, he's going to have his enemy list to lock people up.
That's right.
So that
People who broke
message,
the law.
is resonating, and she also talks about solutions to climate change. She talks about women's health issues, reproductive rights. She talks about a much more inclusive message about immigrants. So I guess we have a real choice.
Reproductive rights coming from somebody who's never had children.
Top supporters and generals, Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kelly, who was Trump's personal chief of staff. Milley, for example, says,
boring.
Now I realize he's a total fascist. He's the most dangerous person to this country. And Kelly said similar things, as have Esper and other top officials in the Trump administration. So that message is also getting out there that this is not a normal election. That Harris, for all her faults, and I'm very critical of her, especially her foreign policy, is going to abide by the Constitution, is going to maintain American democracy, and will concede if she's defeated. But as we were saying before, Trump was not going to concede. In fact, it's very likely Trump will claim victory tonight, even though there is no basis for doing so. And he is not going to abide by the Constitution.
No basis for doing so?
Painter was saying,
I saw 60-40.
Claim victory right now.
Do what he did in 2020, in January 6th.
Yeah, bro.
And try to overturn the results
immediately,
of the election.
bro, right
so
now.
His choice is clear as can be.
Come out, do his victory speech in like an hour.
Mostly in the consensus about this.
So I want to get Ambassador Romo back because, we've been here for the last 3 days now, and you speak to people, they are willing to say that they think Trump will win. They are willing to say that they have voted for Trump in a way that I didn't see in 2020 or in 2016 because of two reasons. One, they feel like,
COVID.
These two wars that are going on, it takes a strong man to stop them, and they think that Trump is the one to do it, not
a
Harris
woman
or Biden. And the other one is the economy. People feel, even though the top line numbers look great, the stock markets are going through the roof and stuff.
Yep.
People feel like inflation's really biting them, and the only person who can fix that, whether he can or not, we don't know. But they
think it's
feel
Trump.
that because he's a businessman, he can somehow fix the inflation and cost of living.
Not just that he's a businessman.
How do you speak to that?
Accurate.
Speak to specifically
Now look at who he's got surrounding him. Elon Musk.
Well, both good questions.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Get a lot of those types of questions up in Pennsylvania in the rural communities and up in Pittsburgh in the city.
RFK Jr., Ron Paul.
I don't think most Americans are focused on foreign policy right now. For better or worse,
America first.
most of the concern and most of the questions are about the economy and inflation.
That's probably true.
Costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're about
Yeah.
reproductive rights and freedom and protecting our democracy.
Yeah.
I don't care about
They're
reproductive
about,
rights.
Immigration and border control.
Immigration, yeah.
Very few people are asking those important questions that I wish more Americans would spend time thinking about.
What?
Is how will these two candidates approach Ukraine and the war in Ukraine from very different perspectives? I think Harris's approach would be more along the Biden approach, to continue to have partnerships with NATO, to continue to be proactive in trying to strategically arm Ukraine to protect its sovereignty and its freedom, the courageous fighting that the people are doing, and to continue to encourage people like Prime Minister Modi, when he meets with Mr. Zelensky, to be a peacemaker, to be somebody who can be in the middle and encourage both the Russians and the Ukrainians to peace. So the foreign policy issues are just not at the tip of people's tongues, nor as important. And
that's probably true.
Is
He's
the
right.
case with the bilateral relations between the U.S. and India. I think Mr. Trump would probably reinforce more tariffs and possible, increasing those significantly on India. He tends to look at a country with the basic trade deficit rather than the strategic relations and the importance that India brings in balancing China, our economic growth, and our democratic
I think Americans care about America.
Values.
I don't think they give a shit about Israel.
I don't care about none of them. America only.
Going to be
More specifically,
better
my community.
U.S.-India relationship than Mr. Trump.
I don't even really care about the United States that much. Just, where I am in it. For now.
All right, we'll see how this plays out. I want to thank all our guests, and I'm sure they'll be with us through the night and through the next few days. The important things to watch out for tonight, like I said, 6 p.m., most of the East Coast states shut, but they're not as relevant as the battleground states. 7 p.m. is when the first big battleground
Why do you
state,
think Trump
Georgia,
would win
closes.
this, considering how almost every candidate and some rich person openly supports Kamala?
Eastern, which would be 6:30 a.m. tomorrow morning in India.
I'm gonna go and move over to this one. The reason why is I don't think that anybody really cares about celebrity endorsements. I think it makes a difference, but it doesn't make a big enough difference to matter.
Yeah, I give zero fucks.
This is the way I think a lot of people see celebrities. It's like, oh, celebrity. Oh, you mean like the people from like the Diddy party? Oh.
Yep, 100%.
Obviously, it does matter and it does move the needle, but it's probably not as big as people might imagine. But of course, it does make a difference. And I also don't think that millennials care. I actually think that young people care less about celebrity culture than people did whenever I was growing up. I was in middle school and high school. I think celebrity culture is kind of dying out compared to how it was.
Celebrity culture for me right now is stand-up comedians.
But I'm saying it's not as it's not as universal as it used to be.
I trust comedians more than celebrities.
So that's the way I see it. Wrong? They're called influencers now? Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely been more democratized, for sure. They care less about TV and movie celebrities and more about me. True, brother.
Yep.
What's he talking about?
Again, back to... Nope, I already covered that.
We got less than 2 hours until we start getting the results.
A little bit of what we understand, a couple of reports of some misinformation going on.
Misinformation?
Particularly
Let's hear it.
in Coconino County as to student voters. Unless you are registered to vote 29 days ahead of this election, you are not eligible to vote, not even for president in Arizona. We do not have same-day voter registration. Some students, as I understand, are being informed otherwise, and they're being told that they can vote for president without being registered in Arizona.
Turn on that
this
shredder.
is not true. And so if there are folks up there in the Flagstaff area, please understand that we're doing what we can to share on social media and in other ways to discourage this practice. But no voter can be turned away. And even if you vote with a provisional ballot, That's perfectly legal under the law. That doesn't mean it will necessarily count, and frankly, usually they do. But if you are not registered to vote within 29 days of the election, you are not eligible to vote.
Why do you need to register?
Even if you are registered outside of Arizona. You've got to be an Arizona voter.
I think it's so people don't vote in two different places.
In Arizona.
True.
This is an
And so they can
group that has been telling this
keep
to voters,
better track of you,
saying they can use
who
a
you are.
only ballot or just vote for president. Neither one of these things is true. And voters across the state can verify their voter registration status at my.arizona.vote. I'll repeat that website, my.arizona.vote. At this time, that's the update. We're doing it in this format because we've got a lot going on, and we wouldn't have had time for questions anyway, although I've been given a high sign that we may have a question or two that have popped up on YouTube, which is the only channel through which, for this briefing, we're going to be taking questions. Do we
They're
have
using this excuse so they can cover their ass when they purge the votes.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and leave the briefing at that stage for now. I just want to run back through here. I apologize and make sure I didn't miss any important points. If you'll bear with me, folks.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
I'm not even 13 yet, and I still support MAGA.
All right, looks like we're good. I just want to close on this point. And again, to explain very quickly how our results come in Arizona.
Oops.
Just imagine 3 buckets. The first bucket is your 8 p.m. bucket. These are our early
Ain't
ballots.
that something?
Everything that has been processed up to the point when the counties are ready to report at 8 p.m. That's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is election day voters, not the voters who bring their ballot on election day, but the folks who actually vote on election day, filling out their ballot in person. That set of numbers will be revealed through the evening tonight.
Okay.
Starting sometime well after 8 p.m. Now, as a caveat there, most of our counties in Arizona are central tabulation, so the ballots have to be transported to a central tabulation location to be tabulated, and then those numbers will come out. Even our counties, however, where tabulation happens on site, those data cards or the USB sticks or whatever the technology is they use have to be transported back to the disconnected server physically so we can get those numbers up. That's bucket number 2, election day voters. And of course, the third bucket is all of the early ballots that are either handed in on election day or which have not been processed yet. Bucket number 3 will go on for several days. We expect we expect official results to be prepared 10 to 13 days, and I think I'm getting the high sign over here. Are we done, or do we have a
10
question?
to 13 days.
Sir, they wanted to know how you know it was Russian on the bomb threats, so maybe just clarify.
Yeah, how you know that?
Yeah, we're not going to
address?
reveal that at this moment in time. We're still making sure to be as clear as possible with that, with our federal and local, federal partners on that specific. But look, Russia wants to sow a lot of distrust. They've been increasing their
Russia bad.
Her easiest path tonight.
Sort of directness in these attacks.
Give a fuck about this. Let's watch this.
70 that gets her right to the White House. But if she were to have a terrible night tonight and the blue wall were to collapse and Trump were to win all this, she has another path. Nevada, Arizona, hold Georgia, and flip North Carolina. She gets to 275 there. Again, if this is the night for Democrats, Hallie, as you know, they'd be having heart attacks all night, but she can still get there with that path.
Talk about then former President Trump's clearest and cleanest path to 270.
The easiest way to remember this, Hallie, for President Trump when you're watching election night tonight, if he kicks it East Coast style. Pennsylvania, he wins Pennsylvania, flips that, holds North Carolina, and flips Georgia back red. If he does this, look at his number, 270, he gets there. But if something were to happen and he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he has to win somewhere else in the Midwest. This is important. There is no Sun Belt strategy for President Trump. He has to win somewhere in the blue wall. He has to break through. If he can flip hold North Carolina, flip Georgia. If he wins Michigan, if he just picks off Nevada or Arizona, either one gets him there. Even the 6 in Nevada get him there. But if he can only win win Wisconsin. He has to win in Arizona. He needs those 11 electoral votes to get to 270.
Let me ask you about a possibility that we're not anticipating necessarily, but that could happen, and that is, what if nobody gets to 270 and it's 269, 269? It's a tie.
That can happen. So listen, let me give the blue wall to Vice President Harris.
Then
and you're
Jeb
Tom,
Bush
are you
wins.
crazy? She's at 270. I'm going to say, hold on. I'll give you all the Sunbelt states to President Trump. Remember, I told you he can't get there with that. He's at 268. So we come to Nebraska. Nebraska has that Where's Waldo effect right now on our map, and that's because Nebraska gives out their electoral votes by total vote, popular vote for the state, but also by congressional district. Maine does this as well. So there's 3 congressional districts. They each give one. CD2, that's a battleground district in Nebraska. That's Omaha. Trump won it in 2016. If he wins it again, look what happens. 269 to 269.
Damn.
And you know what happens there? Do we go down that road?
We don't have to go all the way down the road, but we can say that road leads to Congress.
Yeah,
I don't think
Congress.
that's
The new
gonna happen.
Congress will essentially pick the president, the House, the Senate would pick the vice president.
You heard Tom lay out the importance of Pennsylvania. We're going to take you there when we come back, breaking down how voters all across the country feel about some of these key issues you've been talking about, like the
it's an
democracy,
hour and a half
immigration, abortion night.
until it's
It is
over.
election night here on NBC News.
All right. Damn, what's the fuck? That's we're going to get back to it in a minute. They did that for Bush versus Gore, maybe. Other markets? Yeah, I'm not sure. Trump is back-to-back president? Oh, right, because he's been the president the whole time, right? The census has already admitted that New York should have at least one electoral college vote, and Florida should at least have one more. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Even though I didn't want him to be.
Trump is going to lose. Y'all think he's going to lose? Ooh, maybe he is.
Maybe.
I mean, the thing is, if Trump
Still a coin
loses,
toss.
it's going to be his fault. Like, I mean,
But I think one side's
so many
heavier.
easy W's that he could have had that he didn't go with. And I actually think I feel like, especially with like how people feel about the economy, I feel like Trump should have had this one in the bag.
If he would have dressed up in a squirrel costume,
sweep. But I think that he, really took some
He'd had
risks and made some mistakes, especially like trying to push in on abortion and shit like that. Big mistake. Did you vote today? No.
Same.
Poll chat. It's election day after all. I might poll people, but it's hard really to say what that's going to be. What's this?
We are back now with our special election coverage, Decision 2024, right here on NBC News. We are just over an hour now from the first battleground polls closing, and we've got that exit poll data coming in showing what is driving voters on some of these key issues. We asked this question: which one of these 5 issues
I think it's rigged,
most in deciding
but I don't care.
how you voted for president? You can see it there: state of democracy at 35%, the economy following, abortion access after that, followed by immigration and foreign policy.
Doesn't mean anything.
An interesting note that Chuck Todd just
They
brought
made it up.
that in the state of democracy, when you dig a little deeper into that exit poll, it actually splits almost 50-50. So essentially, whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, the way you look at this issue is different, and that doesn't tell us too much. But it's interesting that it's more important than the economy at this point.
Yeah, and again, these numbers are early; they could shift a little bit, but there's some other pieces to this as well, including on abortion.
Yeah. So let's take a look at abortion, which comes closest to your position on the issue of abortion. This is what we asked: should it be legal in all cases, legal in most cases, legal in some cases? The first question was, who do you trust more to handle abortion? 50% for Kamala Harris, 44% for Trump. That's not a huge surprise.
What I was talking about.
She was closing with abortion, traveling those battleground states with women, talking about the access to
Showed up
abortion.
in Texas, a state that has a very controversial abortion restriction law. Not because Texas is necessarily a battleground they think they're going to flip, but to be able to have that stage for that issue. Of course, former President Trump closed largely on immigration.
Okay, let's go to Pennsylvania right now. It is the key maybe to all the battleground states, the Keystone State. Jacob Soboroff on the ground for us in Pennsylvania. Jacob, tell us exactly where you are and what you're seeing tonight.
We're at Temple University, Tom, at a polling place. It's got a 2-hour-long line. These folks have been waiting for 2 hours. I'm just going to make this short and sweet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different election machines over here. Let me split this line and tell you a little bit about what happened here. Earlier today, we reported how long the lines were. Well, the city of Philadelphia has showed up with 2 new election machines right now. These are going to get set up. The voters are going to be able to vote on them here. And hopefully those lines over there are going to go a little faster, guys.
Okay.
Jacob Soboroff live for us there in Pennsylvania. Are we going to be saying the word Pennsylvania 150 times tonight?
I think we're going to be saying it all night, maybe into tomorrow. That is for sure. So the first battleground polls close in about 90 minutes. We're going to take you there live as the key states start voting and we get the results in.
Then we're going to see 7:30, of course, polls closing in North Carolina, Ohio, and many more throughout the evening. Stay with us. We've got special live coverage right here. Decision 2024 on NBC News.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Rick. Wait, the machines were provided by the Kamala Harris campaign? Wait, what?
Excuse me? What?
What do you mean it
No
deletes
way.
your vote if you click on Trump? What?
Did somebody just say that, or is that true?
It's not a voting machine, it's a pinball machine. Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, I turned this shit down. Where's the rest of these? I'll look at some more. Damn, everybody's on a fucking commercial. It's annoying as hell. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. But yeah, I think it's really going to become, it's going to become contentious, I would say for sure. Only one button. Yeah, there's only one button on the machine. There you go. And what's this? Red Mirage? Look it up. It's a real effect. You typed that 2 or 3 times. I didn't read it the first time. There's a reason for that. Yeah, there's a reason. Everybody knows what that is. People think it's going to happen. Like, here's the way I see it. I mean, it's going to be whatever the fuck, right? I mean, like, like, we don't really need to do a lot of projections at this point, right? I mean, like, it's literally going to be a few hours and we're going to know who wins.
If it's 50-50?
Like, I personally think that it's going to be Trump for sure. You think
Me
that
too.
Kamala calling fake numbers and showing the camera app? No, I didn't see that.
I did. I saw that camera app thing where she was calling a supporter, and it was clearly a camera app.
No, it's not that I missed it. I read everything in chat. People that type the same message regularly, like more than once, it's annoying. That's really it. Pretty sure it's rigged for the first female president. Yeah, well then why didn't Hillary win? Yeah, I mean that's not true. That's stupid. Like, I get that people like to make up bullshit, but like it's clearly not true. I mean, Hillary had way more clout than Kamala Harris, right? I mean, people hate Hillary Clinton, but also, like, I mean, everybody knows who she is. So, like, if that was going to happen, it would have already happened.
Yeah, this one's different than 2016. Like, I can actually, like, or not 2016, 2020. So I can actually feel
It's so weird to me
that Trump's probably going to win, but I don't know.
You think it's weird that people vote on gender? People vote on all kinds of stupid things. Also, like, identity politics are really strong. Like, because the reason why identity politics are so strong is because it's something that everybody, like, fundamentally has, right? It's like you're either white or not white. You're either black or not black, right? Everybody can define that you're a woman or you're a man, right? And, like, people figure it out, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to vote based off of this. So, yeah, I think it absolutely matters. Let's see this.
again.
We are not going back. An unprecedented campaign. I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys.
It all comes down to tonight.
I just don't like Kamala's voice, man.
The key contests.
Pennsylvania will be key.
And she lies. Trump lies too, but like
The biggest issues.
Democrats lie so much worse.
The government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
Oh.
Now, America decides.
That's right.
From
They're gonna
NBC
figure it out.
News, this is Decision 2024. Here are Hallie Jackson and Tom Yamas.
Hey everyone, welcome to an NBC News special
They're presenting
report.
like
We are
HBO
less
drama?
than 90
Yeah,
minutes
true.
away from the polls closing in that first key battleground
All right.
state of Georgia. And we've got breaking news right now. New
What is
exit
it?
poll data just coming into us.
Okay, let's
I'm
see
Tom
it.
Yamas.
And I'm Hallie Jackson. And listen, this is our first look at some of the numbers on who
All right.
is voting and what matters to the people who are voting, even with some folks, maybe somebody you know, still out there in polling lines in every state across the country.
And this is really significant because this is the data we're just getting from actual voters as they leave those polling places. So it tells us a lot, more than any of the opinion polling we've seen in the last few weeks. So let's talk about the issues, right? What's taking voters to the polls? Here, voters were asked about the most important issue to them: the economy, abortion, foreign policy, immigration. And look at that, Hallie, 35% saying the state of democracy, 31% on the economy,
I just wish I
and
knew what this
14% on
means.
abortion. Again, we want to say this is the first wave of exit poll data. We want to be real careful about this. This was in 10 battleground states, but this is huge.
600 polling places across the country, early, in-person, mail-in, and election day of. That grain of salt is well noted, Tom, because these numbers could shift a little bit. But here's why this is so surprising and why we're pausing on that 35% on state of democracy. Because all along, and you know this for months, the economy has been the top issue that voters said would be driving them to the polls.
Yeah, duh.
And usually immigration was right up there in the top two, followed by abortion access. You can see here, abortion there, 14% of voters say it was the most important issue to them, with
Damn.
immigration trailing. Now, again, these numbers could shift a little bit, but one other note on state of democracy, Tom, that can cut both ways. There are Republicans who are concerned about state of democracy. There are Democrats who say they're concerned about state of democracy.
Let's talk about this other exit poll. Who do you trust more to handle the economy? And remember, the president, he closed on immigration and the economy. 51, former President Trump, 51% saying Trump, 47% for Harris. We thought this divide might be bigger, and this may change as the night goes on, but that's not terrible news for Democrats right now.
No, the other piece of this is the issue that Vice President Harris largely closed on, and that
I
is
don't think that's
abortion
true.
access.
I don't
We
think it's
trust more to handle
51-47.
abortion. It is no surprise here to see that she is leading on trust on this issue over former President
Yeah, no
Trump.
shit.
Yeah, it was a big issue. She was traveling with women all throughout states like Michigan, Pennsylvania to make sure
I don't trust Trump at all on abortion, but I don't care about abortion, so
here. And again, this could change, but this
I do care and on the Harris side.
Of course, closing on immigration. This
They're
is a
for it,
message
and I'm
that he has
100%
hammered down
against
for
it.
months with his rhetoric on migrants in this country and on trust.
Yeah,
and
rhetoric.
immigration.
Yeah.
Here
There's
he
that
leads,
word.
Again, consistent with the public polling that we've seen. But I want to
That's
bring in
like-
NBC's Chuck Todd now, because Chuck, there's some interesting stuff here with all of the noted caveats, with all of the warnings. We don't want to overread into it. Like, let's be super clear on that. But talk me through your takeaway.
Well, look, I think the biggest thing is the fact that when you take economy and immigration, which are the two strongest issues for President Trump, and the fact that they're not, neither one of them's the top issue.
Yeah.
If you're in Mar-a-Lago right now, that makes you a little bit nervous. And I look, state of democracy.
Although I bet Mar-a-Lago would tell you we're not too
Of
super
course,
worried about it.
of course, because that's you always have to always be projecting confidence on there. I get it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the fact that obviously abortion rights ahead of immigration, that had not. By the way, that has been going back and forth in all of our polling. A lot of times it's how do you ask that question? And of course, when you ask, when we had been asking voters if there's a single issue you would vote on more than any other in polling, that has been abortion rights. We didn't ask a question like that. But the state of democracy question is interesting to me because look,
My biggest issue
I
is
don't think we're asking the right.
start shutting down all of these evil companies, and then I'll start voting.
Because if you think about it, we've offered them 5 specific issues, 4 specific issues: foreign policy, immigration, abortion, the economy, and then we say state of the democracy.
Yeah.
So if you're
Who doesn't
not-
want democracy?
Correct.
Right.
So if you're a
Me.
voter that says, you know, I'm really motivated by sort of the current climate, right? Whatever that is, it's there's so many different ways you could describe it, but that tells you it's not a single issue that's getting you to the polls. You're reacting to the climate. There's a group of voters on both sides here that believe their way of life is on the ballot, right? Who are we as Americans?
It's fundamental.
Correct. This is not.
That's true.
This is not to be dismissive of the single issues, but there's a micro campaign specific on those issues, And then there's the macro, who are we as Americans, right? And I think what we're finding out here is that maybe we need a better punch for people, but that's the way I view it. And when you look at the splits on this, not to give
He
away
said
too
punch.
much, but when you look on the splits,
It's a violent word.
it's a 50-50 essentially on which side
Putting that word into people's heads, into their subconscious.
These are my way of life is on the ballot.
We've been talking about the gender divide since we've been talking about early voting and how voters may break for either candidate. Here we have it right here, Chuck. State of democracy, 36% for men, 33%
What does that
for
mean?
women. The economy, 34, 28. Abortion, 8, 19, and then immigration, 12, 10. Again, this is early. This might seem a little odd to viewers at home watching and looking at this, thinking this is the most important issue, but this is the data we have right now.
It is, and, you know, early data.
This data means nothing.
You know, there's a running joke on Twitter already. This is the 20th anniversary of John Kerry's inauguration. Right? Early exit polls, you know, were so sunny for him. So any of us that have experienced that, you take it all with a grain of salt here. But if this is how voters were thinking about this election, if this is the makeup, it's certainly something you'd rather be the Team Harris. This is what they would want to see versus what Team Trump is saying.
Keep in mind, both candidates, right, over the course of the last month or so, nodded to this issue of who we are fundamentally, with very different visions that they had, right? Former President Trump, the country is in a dangerous and broken place, and he's the person who can come in and fix it. Vice President Harris, it will be more dangerous if Donald Trump is reelected, and she's the one who can represent that fresh start for people who might be exhausted.
Well, and it's interesting, if you want to look in the exit poll and say, boy, what is the evidence that Trump's doing well? Well, by the way, Joe Biden's job rating is really low in here, 41%. That's very low. People are dissatisfied with the direction of the country. But just like with state of democracy, you can view the direction of the country negatively because of Donald Trump's existence, you know, in the political scene. And that may be why you pick that number. And I think we're seeing some evidence of that, too. So, look, I do think
too broad of a question.
What this exit poll is saying and what I really believe this election, this is a macro election. This is an election about who we are. This is not about the economy and inflation. Certainly, they've been the mood music of the conversation, but the voters are what this is telling me is they went in there with a much bigger concern about the direction of the country.
Yeah, and it's still very early. It's actually just getting started. But we do have some interesting data on the economy. Christine Romans has been digging into that, which sort of gives us a better idea of what voters are thinking.
That's right. It is early. Think of these as breadcrumbs. And way down the line, we're going to know how this election is going to turn out. But these are the little signals that we're getting here early. And they could change and we could get more of them. But the bottom line at the very early hour
wife's
here
boyfriend
is that
voted
people
for
feel
Trump?
pretty lousy about the economy.
Really?
Not so good, 35%. Poor, 34%. That is a big number on the condition of the U.S. economy. When you ask people about their family finances compared to 4 years ago,
worse, probably,
that's
right?
the question you ask every 4 years, right? Also, think about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was a pandemic.
20%
4 years
differential,
ago,
that's
people were wearing
crazy.
masks to vote. People were changing how they voted and how they lived their lives because of a public health crisis, right? So a very different scenario this time around. Only 30% say it's about the same today. 24% say better. 45% say it's worse today in terms of their family finances. So we know there's been this negative mood music, Chuck, you know, for months now about inflation, about the overall feeling of the economy, even as all the top line numbers, Hallie and Tom, have remained really strong.
Christine, but before you go, do we know if Harris was able sort of to detach herself from President Biden on the issue of the economy yet? Do we have that data yet? Do we know anything about that?
I don't know that yet, but I'll tell you something. When I see such a big spread between the good and bad for how people feel about the economy, and then you see who's better to handle the economy, Harris or Trump with only a 4-point spread. That's interesting. That's tight in terms of what voters are saying about who can handle it best. Otherwise, look at moderate hardship to a
People
severe
in the
hardship.
Timcast Discord are mad because I didn't vote. Get fucked.
Number for them. So we've been hearing people complain about inflation. Voters told us inflation was a hardship for their family. But you look at who's better to handle the economy, only a 4-point spread. It's early. Things can change. We're going to get more data, but these
I think people will perceive Trump to be better to handle the economy.
Romans, we thank you for that. Hallie, I'm going to send it over to you.
Because the economy seemed better under
Peter
Trump.
Alexander and Garrett
I
Hayes,
think
our
Trump
campaign
probably be an overall better president for people.
Trump out in the field as we're just getting that exit poll.
But I didn't care enough to vote, so
I
don't think it's going to really be all that different.
See her favorably, 50% unfavorable. Peter, let me ask you, what's the sense you're getting from the campaign as they've been watching not just the exits come in, but also some of that data from precincts, folks reporting, et cetera?
Yeah, well, certainly the favorable number is a number they feel good about, that they perform better than former President Trump and Joe Biden right now. Obviously, there was some concern that Joe Biden could be sort of a weight, an albatross around the neck of Vice President Harris, but she's outperforming him by 7 points in terms of favorability right now. That's something that the folks in Wilmington or the folks who will be here at Howard University tonight alongside the Vice President feel good about. I'll tell you what else we're hearing from a senior campaign official within the course of the last several minutes. They're saying one thing they view as encouraging right now is extremely high turnout among college voters. Particularly, they give us the example of what they're seeing in the state of Pennsylvania, pointing to the campuses of Lehigh and Lafayette. They say at least at one of those campuses, there are lines that extend for up to 7 hours right now. They say the campaign is sending support and surrogates to keep students in line. A separate senior campaign advisor telling me just moments ago that support comes in the form of some of the stars of the films from the Avengers series. Paul Rudd, Mark Ruffalo, and Don Cheadle, among others, will be heading to campus to try to energize those students, to keep them in line and to make sure they stick around, to make sure those votes are cast over the course of the day. A separate number we're seeing about another
Government paid shills.
one to watch today is North Carolina. North Carolina is interesting because it's a state that obviously Donald Trump has been putting a lot of energy into, a state that he claims publicly that he is going to win right now, but he has been there many times, many more than Kamala Harris, which may be an indication that they're not quite as confident by their internal data as they are projecting publicly. The Harris campaign telling us that according to their numbers, the numbers they're seeing right now, rural Republican turnout is, as they say, lower. It's based on a small sample, they say, of rural voters at this time, but they say they're seeing a much larger turnout than they may have expected in cities like Durham, a big, dense, bluer part of that state that could be a positive sign early on, at least, for the Harris folks. Hallie?
North Carolina is an interesting one, Peter, especially with Team Trump dumping a lot of money into that state late in the game. Peter Alexander, thank you very much. Tom?
All right, Hallie, thank you. Let's take a look at the favorability for former President Trump. So here's what we have from our exit polls right here. Unfavorable, 54%. This is the opinion of the former president. Favorable, 44%.
Orange man,
He's unfavorable,
bad.
slightly higher than Vice President Harris. I want to go over to Garrett Haake at Trump headquarters in Palm. Okay, we had Garrett Haake. It's his live broadcast. Some things happen fast. Sometimes we have people, sometimes we don't. Things are changing on election night. But
y'all think, wait, is that one fake?
Say goodbye to Garrett Haake, and I'll say hello to Hallie Jackson.
Hey, friend, I'm here. I've always got your back.
So listen, it's hard to kind of parse those numbers. 54% unfavorable for Trump, about 50 for Kamala Harris for the vice president.
Yeah, more
Still
people
early
hate Trump.
in the night,
Definitely.
but a little
Guaranteed.
bit better for Democrats in that poll.
Keeping in mind that both of these candidates are trying to say that they would be the better one for the country over the course of the next 4 years. Can I ask you, Tom, since we're here at the big board, which is going to be your sort of dancing partner throughout the night, to pull up the road to 270? Because remember, that's what this is all about. The Electoral College, first one to 270, has it in the bag. Talk us through the dynamics here.
Yeah, so we're going to start election night where we left off in 2020, right? This is the way the map ended up. The 7 battleground states aren't penciled in. A reminder, President Biden, he won 6 of those 7 battleground states. The only one he didn't win was North Carolina. So let's talk about Kamala Harris's path tonight. Her easiest path to 270, she wins Pennsylvania, wins Michigan, wins Wisconsin. She holds that.
Think she'll win Michigan?
Hallie, you see the number right there. She gets to 270.
It's over.
But if she were to have a terrible night and she were to lose the blue wall, say it were to collapse and Trump were to win all those states, she has one more path, but this is going to give Democrats heart attacks. Nevada, Arizona, holds Georgia, and flips North Carolina. She gets there at 275.
What about former President Trump's cleanest and clearest path, Tom?
You know, for former President Trump, just think about this when you're watching tonight. Remember the East Side, right? Where Trump is from New York. He's now living in Florida. If he flips Pennsylvania, holds North Carolina, and flips Georgia, he gets to 270 right there.
Damn.
But if something were to happen and he were to lose Pennsylvania, he has to win somewhere else in the blue wall. He doesn't have a Sun Belt strategy. He has to either win Michigan or Wisconsin if he's holding those 2 southern states. If he wins Michigan, either Nevada or Arizona do it for him. Nevada, even with just 6, gives it to him. But if he can't win Michigan, if it's only Wisconsin, he has to win in Arizona. This is where the GOP really has to fight hard to get those votes. 272, he gets there.
And depending on the spread, Tom, in other words, depending on how close or not this race is,
if
we're waiting on Arizona or Nevada, everybody wants to know when might we know the results. That could be the scenario in which you and I are sitting for the next 4 days.
Well, 4 days, maybe even the weekend. You'll remember 2020, we were waiting a long time for certain states. Arizona, look, everyone is telling us this time around, and again, take this with a grain of salt, that the states have improved, that the reporting has improved. We should get things sooner. We're hearing about states that took a long time in 2020. We may get them earlier tonight, which is going to make for a very exciting election night. It might make for an early earlier election night, but you never know what can happen.
Thank
Something
God.
else that would potentially be exciting.
Yeah, I don't want to be up that long, man.
This was a 269.
I'm going to be dead at the end of the night.
Nobody got to 270.
People's political minds, if they're political fans, their minds would explode. So here's how it happens, the easiest way. She wins the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. You'll say, Tom, 270. She goes to the White House. And I say, hold on, Hallie Jackson, hold on. And I give Trump the Sun Belt, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. He's at 268, and you're like, Tom, did you go to school?
Still not there, dude.
Yeah, did you get that? No. Okay, so Nebraska, it's got that Where's Waldo status. And the reason why it has that Where's Waldo status is because it gives away electoral votes through popular vote, the whole state. If you win it, you get 2. Each congressional district, though, you each get 1. If Trump were to win that, like we said, if he wins it, it goes 269, 269. He won it in 2016, that congressional district. It could happen. It'd be very hard. But if this happened, the new Congress, the House would pick
you're
the
stacked
president,
on cash.
the Senate
This
would
election
pick the
doesn't
vice president.
affect
It's
you
kind
at
of a
all.
complicated
We
process.
need Trump to win
To say
this.
the least,
Talking
kind
for
of
like 50
complicated.
hours.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things we were talking about, too, the favorability and unfavorability for both Vice President Harris and for former President Trump here. We now see those unfaves for the former president.
Right.
And again, underwater, 54% unfavorable.
I don't know what anybody wants Asmongold to do about that.
All night, Garrett Hake, he's finally up and ready to go. Garrett, so look, the
Well, you want him to go vote real quick?
Donald Trump slightly.
Yes, I could too.
When it comes to
I ain't doing it.
So you wouldn't be ahead. I guess you'd be under. But I do want to ask you something. People were watching former
I'd
President
rather
Trump
just
today
let
when he was
everybody
voting in West Palm
seethe.
Beach with his wife Melania.
Yeah.
He sounded a little tired. He sounded a little hoarse. He had been talking nonstop for the last 4 or 5 days on the
'Cause
campaign
he's old
trail.
and fat.
Should people misinterpret
True.
that? Because I know there was some sort of Monday morning
Got
quarterback
him.
saying, "Oh, he's tired. He doesn't look positive. Maybe it's the body language." What are you hearing from the Trump campaign?
Look, Tom, former's older than me. I was on that same overnight flight with him last night from Michigan back to Palm Beach. Landed about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was tired too at that voting place. So I don't know that I would read too much into that as any particular signal. There was a brutal schedule here the last 24 hours of this campaign with Donald Trump trying to do something not about those unfavorability numbers, which the Trump campaign has long understood are kind of baked in. There's not a person in this country who doesn't have sort of an already pretty well-established opinion of Donald Trump. They were trying to attack Kamala Harris on the issue sets rather than make him more popular, except I would say on the edges with some of these podcast interviews that they were trying to do, where they thought they might be able to introduce him to young men in particular who didn't already have fully formed opinions of Donald Trump, convince them that maybe he was a more normal guy, sort of a more laid-back guy than the public perception would be. They wanted to win on some specific issues, including immigration, which, as I dig through this poll data, I'm not convinced that they've done. In the early exits that we have seen on the question about what should happen with undocumented immigrants in this country, a significant majority of Americans saying they think they should be offered a pathway to citizenship, not deported back to the countries that they came from. Tom, this is a
39%.
staple of every single Donald Trump rally, interview, press conference appearance for the last 2 years, his idea of the world's largest mass deportation program. The voters are telling us in those exit polls they don't agree.
Garrett, just before you go, give me one data point you're hearing from the Trump campaign that gives them hope tonight.
Fake news. Hold up. What?
It's rural voters, Tom. They think there's a landslide
What's
out
fake?
there, and rural voters coming out from.
I missed it. I was looking at
We'll
Twitter.
see it one tiny county at a time across the country tonight.
It'll be a rural-urban divide tonight, all those battleground states pretty much. Garrett Hake, great reporting as always.
That's fucked up.
Great work on the campaign trail. All right, Hallie, I'm going to send it over
I
to
think
you.
about 89% of everything I'm seeing is fake.
All right, the thing that everybody has been waiting for, actual vote counts in the battleground states. 7 o'clock, watch for
Yellow
Georgia.
mean
That's when
libertarian?
polls close there. 7:30, it's going to be North Carolina, it's going to be Ohio, and then 8 o'clock Eastern. This is the big one because that is when polls close in battleground Pennsylvania. You see it there. As Tom has laid out, that could potentially be ball game for these candidates. We know that that is so critical here, Tom.
Yeah, coming up right here on NBC. The night is just getting started. New data
boy,
out
this
on
is
the
about
exit
to start
polls
getting
on how you, the American
crazy,
public,
man.
feel about issues like abortion and the border.
Stay right here with our special coverage of Election Day 2024 continuing on NBC News.
Oh boy, we're not watching Asmongold the whole time, by the way. I'm just, wanting to have somebody else to guide me through this because I don't want to.
But yeah. And so anyway, this feels dystopian, like the way everything is presented. Nah, why? I mean, they always done it like this.
Yeah.
Conveniently 2016, when everything went downhill, was completely uncontested. Everybody agrees 2016 is when the world started going to shit. That's right. I'm talking about Harambe. Ooh, true. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't give a damn about abortion. I feel like abortion is, you know, like, obviously, like, more people that are women care about it. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So, like, there's a gender divide with abortion. I wonder why. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. No matter who wins, be respectful and kind. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen. Yeah, that'll be okay. Show Fox and CNN. What else are they doing? What are they doing over in CNN?
Yeah, let's see what they're doing.
A bunch of fucking nothing, like just doing whatever. First projections, just some random ass shit. I don't even know if this is actually CNN, but yeah, it's just like this random guy. And what's this? This guy, I remember this guy came up, started talking mad shit about Russia. He's got 192,000 people watching this on Fox. Like this one's got 72,000 right here. Peanut is
take me to a good one.
Harambe, maybe.
True.
2016 was the year for video games.
I don't think Peanut.
That's it.
I don't think Peanut was as big as Harambe.
For denying women the presidency.
There's something about primates. Whatever he said about denying presidency. I'm more important. I'm talking first.
True. Yeah, you're right.
You hear it from me, not him.
I never thought of it like that. I didn't, but yeah, that's a good way to say it. Wow, you think Trump can affect Russia and Ukraine war? I don't know. Probably, but like I'm not sure. It depends on like I'm sure could he? Yeah, but like would that be a good thing? Maybe, maybe not. It's really hard to say. I'm not really sure what's on the table with that. Yeah, I don't know. So many chuds in chat. Well, I mean, I usually let people like in my chat, like I let people say whatever the fuck they want, right? And so, you know, if it's something good or bad or anything like that, I kind of just let them go and say whatever they want. I had an awkward moment with a coworker who said he never voted before. His girlfriend mom pressing him to go with him after work wholeheartedly. I'm the only person that said to him, bro, it's your vote. Do whatever you want. It's yours. Let him be pissed. Yeah, there's always people that think that they have, this is a big problem. People think they have like a moral authority to like tell you what to do with your vote. Like it's crazy, but that happens from everybody. It's not like just Democrats that do that. It's everybody does this. It's way loud.
I'll be back in just a second. I'll be able to hear it, so if anything crazy happens, I'll yell.
Now with our election coverage, the country in a lot of places still voting, but we have some breaking news, which is our first exit polls that have just come out.
That's right. Remember, the first sense that we're getting, early sense of what the top issues are for voters. And you can see the pie chart here, right? 35% say the most important issue to them is the state of democracy, followed by the economy at 31%, then abortion, 14%, immigration, and foreign policy following. Interesting here, because remember, for months, that public polling had suggested that, in fact, the economy was the biggest and most important issue to voters, especially with those inflation numbers, Tom.
Yeah, and also, you know, we have to tell our viewers, state of democracy can break both ways. It depends if you're Republican or you're Democrat.
What does state of democracy even mean?
The president closed with the economy and immigration, and that was the second issue, the economy, but not as high as maybe Republicans wanted.
That's exactly right. Of course, Vice President Harris, Tom, closing on abortion.
We're not a democracy.
Yeah, let's talk about abortion, right? And this is which comes closest to your position. Abortion should be illegal, 30%, legal, 66%.
Yeah.
That's a huge number for Democrats.
The Vice President had made this a key part of her platform.
I kept telling y'all this shit like this. People don't want
like
this.
Texas, Georgia, Florida, where access to abortion is front and center after either controversial restrictive laws.
How the fuck does abortion matter that much?
And it was somewhat a gamble, right? Because abortion wasn't necessarily in the news at the time because it was way past Roe v. Wade, but it was something Democrats knew would drive voters to the polls.
Well, they saw it in the midterms in 2022, and they did better than expected, largely on the back of course, that decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. And we have been talking all night about these key battlegrounds. You are going to be talking about those key battlegrounds. One of them, of course, North Carolina. This is a state still reeling from Hurricane Helene, which has been the center of a major misinformation campaign, in part amplified by former President Trump. Our exit poll asked, is federal hurricane aid going to people who need it? And you can see the numbers here. 49% said yes. 46% said no. I want to get to Sam.
So then it's no.
North Carolina, and a question since that hurricane hit.
If half people say no, then it's no.
Will this affect people making it to the polls, getting their ballots in? What are you seeing and what are you hearing?
They'd probably still be able to do it. That was a while ago.
Sure. Let me start with part A, Hallie and Tom. Good to be with you. I'm in this tiny precinct right now, about 15 or 20 minutes outside of Ashland, Buncombe County. And what's amazing is they just celebrated 1,000 people voted just in this tiny precinct. Guys, the reason it's relevant is we see the last voters here that are lining up. We have about an hour and a half left, is the fact that you had another location where this was supposed to be that's still having helicopter supplies dropped in for victims of Hurricane Helene, as officials here are trying to coordinate and figure out where people will go to vote. And yet, despite all of that, you only had about a quarter of all the election sites in this entire county that were impacted in some way, whether it's combining with an existing polling site or to move it all together. The folks seem to be finding where they need to go. The early voting numbers in Buncombe were at about 58%.
That kid's voting? Yeah, he just voted for Kanye.
So we are, in fact, Hallie, to your question, seeing people come out and actually exercise their civic duty and be able to vote. As far as the misinformation component of this is concerned, though, I did have a conversation recently with a young couple that just voted for the first time. They are, in many ways, emblematic of how a lot of folks feel. It's not necessarily that they think that FEMA was only giving out $750, as was that first law.
I have responsibilities. I gotta
whether FEMA
let
was
the dogs
redirecting
out.
funding from, disaster relief to the border or any of the other things that were out there. They said that they didn't think that the community was doing a good job of disseminating water and food supplies to the people that need it. And that was a real tangible impact that affected their votes. And I'm hearing that not just from that young couple, but people who are voting across the county, guys.
The state where you are, Sam, there's also another race that a lot of people in North Carolina and well beyond are watching, and that is NC1, the state's first congressional district, which could not only be a factor for the balance of power in the House of Representatives, but could also give us an early look at some of the trend lines as far as who is turning out and where, right?
It could. So we're talking about Don Davis right now,
bro,
who
see
actually
that guy?
won that previous congressional election. By
They
about
got
5
Bigfoot
percentage
out
points,
here
but there was a
voting.
mid-cycle redistricting.
Bigfoot be voting.
And the reality is that there were fewer black
Oh,
voters in this
shit.
district now. More right-leaning parts of, say, the outer
Bigfoot
banks
better not be
area
voting.
in North Carolina
He ain't
were
human.
added. And suddenly he's in a dogfight with Lori Buckout, who's a businesswoman. And the question becomes, how does this speak reflectively to what's going on across the country? Well, certainly in terms of younger voters turning out, that's part of it. But also, North Carolina is a state where there are more registered Democrats by about 100,000 than Republicans.
Sky is looking purple outside my house. I think there's gonna be some naders.
There is a super majority of
Get tornadoed.
in the state legislature.
No.
Is a reflection of that.
Sam Brock live for us there in North Carolina. Sam, thank you.
North Carolina is going to be such a big story. We are tracking the latest exit polls as they come in, and the first polls in battleground Georgia are set to close soon.
Stay with us for our NBC News special coverage of Election Night 2024 tonight, even into tomorrow morning.
Election.
And Lester are going to take you all the way through right here on NBC News. Stay with us.
Oh boy. Trump is announcing his victory? Damn, what took so long?
Yeah, seriously, man.
Yeah.
maybe it won't be.
Massive
Maybe it won't be.
cheating.
Maybe
Oh,
it
yeah.
is.
News lives in the now.
Look at this. You can't even see anything anymore.
Let's break down what we know.
You gotta see this. News for the generation.
I see what's
that
happening in the
is
UK.
NBC News Now.
I just think it's so funny, man. It's so funny that did Joe Biden drop
Welcome
out
to
as
election
trending?
night on NBC
I
News.
fucking
Decision
I
2024
tried to tell
starts
people.
right now.
They wouldn't listen.
The race, a dead heat.
Make America great.
They wouldn't listen.
We are not
They wouldn't listen.
Yep.
an unprecedented campaign.
Oh shit.
I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys. It all comes down to tonight. The key contests.
Pennsylvania will be key.
If we win Michigan, we win the whole thing.
The biggest issues.
I will protect our jobs. I will protect our borders.
The government should not be
Think Trump's gonna win Michigan?
Now,
If you're watching after the election, then you already know. Let me know
I think
down
if
in the
Trump
comments.
loses, it's going to be because of abortion.
From NBC News, this is Decision
Yep.
2024.
I think that's going to be the
Here is
reason.
Hallie Jackson.
I'm Hallie Jackson, and we are coming
One-issue
on the air
voters? Yeah,
here
of
on
course.
NBC News with brand new
It's just the way
exit
it
poll
is.
data.
Anybody who is still waiting in line, you need to stay in line. Make sure you all go vote. The time is coming close. There have been some issues. Ignore the fake news. We're going to do our best to make sure we're getting you the best up-to-date information. There are a lot of people spreading lies because they're trying to screw with you. Let's just have a good, clean election. And hopefully, I think what we're hoping for is clear and obvious results by tonight. But that seems rather unlikely. So before we jump into everything, make sure you guys go to castbrew.com and buy Cast Brew coffee because it is the best coffee. Everyone
I caught
agrees.
this in time.
At least that's what I've been told. We got Ian's Graphene Dream. We got Appalachian Nights.
This
That's everybody's
also
favorite. And a bunch of other flavors.
happening
I should say
on,
blends.
Daily
And of course,
Wire.
go to boonieshq.com. Check it out. Step on Sneck and Find Out boards are available. And we also have stickers. We've got Step on Sneck and Find Out stickers. They're much, much cheaper. As well as everybody's favorite, the Boobies. If you like the Boobies stickers, those are also available, of course. Go to timcast.com, click Join Us, become a member. You may be wondering why. Well, a lot of people have talked about how they've made friends, how they want to make friends, and the Discord server is a community of tens of thousands of people where you can
I'm in
hang
there.
out and talk to like-minded individuals, have meetups, there's pre-shows, there's after-shows. It's going to be a lot of fun. Smash that like button,
is a lot of
share
fun.
the show right
I'm
now
in
with
there all the
everyone
time.
you know. We are going to be live all night. We're going to have tremendous guests coming in, Daily Wire crew, as well as many of the party guests. And then there's, at a certain point, we are going to merge streams. I will be joining the Daily Wire crew.
Well,
and
I'm
we'll have
reacting
one
to it.
big show very briefly where we talk about what's currently happening. So I hope you guys are sticking around and hanging out with us. To start things off, we have a bunch of really amazing people. Mr. Freedom Tunes himself.
Thank you so much, Seamus Coughlin of Freedom Tunes. We just put
Freedom
up a
Tunes is
video
amazing.
today. It's our first place video out of the last 10. People are really loving it. It's called what the interview would look like if Joe Rogan agreed to Kamala's terms. So if you guys want to watch that, we just made a cartoon of what a Kamala Harris-Joe Rogan interview would have to look like. Yesterday, we released a
Like if they
cartoon called
interviewed
Kamala
each other?
Harris polling at 100% with people who vote at 3 a.m. The audience is also really enjoying that one. So if you want to check those out, subscribe, like, and share, I'd really appreciate it. We're building culture here and trying to make entertaining content. And I hope that you guys enjoy it and can support us in that. And as for tonight, very excited to see the results. Very excited to be at the Daily Wire. I hope we win, but if we lose, Ben Shapiro will come in here and comfort all of us.
There, gang. Okay, there, gang. It's all good. You're fine.
I'm looking forward to that because
We
I'm
had quite a potty mouth on
you
last
worried?
night.
No,
They were
I'm
gonna get
feeling pretty good, but
crushed.
we'll see. We'll
Couple
see.
F-bombs.
We got Mary hanging out.
Great.
Yes, I was hanging out last night. My name is Mary Morgan. You will usually find me on Pop Culture
She's my favorite on
Crisis.
Timcast. Not a
so
simp.
I guess everyone is tuning in for my
I promise.
political insights tonight.
What's up? Shane Cashman, host of Inverted World Live. I think this is the most inverted election we've had in a long time. Our current president is a skeleton that eats children. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the nightmare.
Hold on.
Literally true.
Fact check.
True.
He bit 2 babies. Okay?
Missing contact.
Publicly. I'm
Missing contact.
talking about the privately.
Just fact check, those children were dressed as chickens.
And he was
Not all.
confused. All right. So, host of Inverted World Live.
What's up?
Your host
Shane
of
Cashman,
Inverted
by the
World.
way.
Yeah. Inverted World Live every Sunday at 6. What's
And
good?
Ian's here.
Man, I tell you
I
what,
don't know
this
what
has been
Inverted
a
World
crazy
is.
season, dude. So let's wrap
I
it
do.
up with a
I do.
crazy
I was
9-hour
saying that
stream.
as you
Ian
watching
Crossland House.
this.
I want to give a special shout out to Roman Nation holding it down on the Discord. Bro's
Roman
hot.
Nation's cool.
He knows what to do.
I
Also,
like Roman
speaking of the
Nation.
hot dudes, got one to my left.
Whoa.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it.
He's my dad.
My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary.
From a
Ladies and
boy.
gentlemen, you know, I think we're the best live stream because I don't know how many other election coverage live streams have purchased a bottle of 10-year-old Old Rip Van Winkle. Because, you know, on the way here, we drove. I was in Gatlinburg and went to a liquor store to get some martini mix for our good friend Seamus Coughlin over here.
Yeah, I want to try.
And I couldn't help but notice there was this very fine bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. And I thought, we're going to need it. I'm not a drinker, but if Trump wins, we're going to need it.
By the way, by
If
martini
if he does not win,
I'm gonna break into my
we're really
roommate's
gonna need it.
room and I'm gonna steal his alcohol
then
if Trump
there are
wins.
no results and we're all
Promise
feeling a
you.
little bit of anxiety, yeah, we're definitely going to need it. But you know what? We're going to crack it open now anyway. And so all of our guests who are coming to hang out are going to sip on some very fine Kentucky bourbon.
If he doesn't win, I think some of us are going to need lawyers too.
Yeah. Well, I want to clarify that when Tim said martini mix, he actually meant a much manlier thing than that. It was some whiskey
I
that
think
I asked for.
if Kamala wins, that Tim Pool's
Yeah. No,
little
honestly,
lawsuit
Tim
thing he's
literally
doing
goes out.
gonna fall
we
apart.
did. I asked for some vodka, but he goes out and he buys this insanely
And his warning,
expensive
I will be
whiskey.
talking over
I'm
them.
like, that's beautiful.
This is my show.
It was for you.
It was just for me.
It was for all of us here so that we can enjoy tonight and, you know.
You wanted to see
This is just it. This is the day. Okay, it's crazy because I remember I'm waking up in the morning and I'm looking at the TV and it's like Fox News, 98 days till the election, and now it's right now. And I would describe. So I only did a couple morning segments, and I was talking to some people. I said, you know, I got to be honest. The news right now is like a Jackson Pollock painting. It's someone took a shotgun full of paint and just on the wall because the news is changing so rapidly. The data is flying back and forth. You got liberals posting their electoral college maps where it's like Kamala wins in a landslide. Then Republicans are posting theirs, Trump wins in a landslide. And I'm just like, yo, this is nuts. You've got people saying
That's
that
why
the
I'm
voting
saying
machines
it's a
have
coin
shut down in
toss.
Cambria County, PA. But then other people coming out back, stop. They repaired that a long time ago. It was a minor issue. They've extended voting hours till 10 p.m. Okay. So it looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. It is just chaos.
And to your point, I want to read an
Nobody knows.
headline I read earlier. Outrage over Peanut the Squirrel's death sparks bomb threats.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
This is a real headline.
I do want to say this too, though.
I think that actually did piss
we got a lot
people
to go
off.
through, and we are going to be reading news in real time, updates in real time. So I do want to start off with one very powerful thing, and that is the assassination of Peanut. I do think has factored in, may factor into a minor mobilization. And I will stress, for those that don't know the story, there's a guy who had a squirrel, rescued a baby squirrel, raised that squirrel for 7 years. The state came in, took the squirrel and a raccoon, and assassinated them. And I call it an assassination because it was literally a politically motivated killing of a prominent figure with a large following. The squirrel had 2 million followers.
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
It was a celebrity.
Thank you for retracting the laugh.
It's funny, strange.
So,
Definitely not funny.
Peanut was our JFK.
Well, you know, it's almost like another Harambe. So Peanut the squirrel.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah. Peanut the squirrel had
Not
like
quite
2
on
million
that level.
followers.
They're kind of
and
forcing
was
it.
killed by the state, and it doesn't make sense. They said that the agents who came in to search the house were bit by the squirrel and the raccoon, so they had to do what did they do, like a necropsy or whatever it's called on the brain, so they can see if it's got rabies. And I'm like, I don't buy that for a second. This is a tame squirrel that's been living here. It's not biting anybody.
You can also test the saliva and or skin fat. They could have. They probably just didn't have access to the tech.
I'm going to tell you what I think. I think the reason they went in and took the squirrel and the raccoon is because New York does not want people to start getting raccoons and squirrels to make videos on Instagram and get millions of followers.
True.
I think they intentionally went in to kill those animals because they did not want the cultural ramifications, which I believe qualifies as an assassination.
Well, I just want to say, obviously, this has been compared to Harambe. One key difference is that in the
Nuts out for
instance of
Peanut.
Harambe, a kid
They
fell into the
assassinated
enclosure.
Peanut.
And so they were trying to protect the
Bro.
child. They just went and killed this squirrel for no reason. It was zero,
True.
like,
It was like
justification.
There is also another cute animal
I
in
mean about
danger
it,
of
but, like,
execution right
it
now.
actually
Her
did
name
piss
is
me
Wu
off.
Dang. She's this baby hippo. Are you familiar?
Why are they going to
I've
kill
heard
her?
of
The
I
baby
didn't
hippo.
know.
Yeah, she just
My dog's a
predicted
baby hippo.
Trump's victory.
right.
Oh,
They
yeah.
presented her with 2 watermelons.
She's a
one
far-right-
said
she's a
Harris and
psychic
one
hippo?
said Trump. Yeah, she's a psychic hippo,
Interesting.
and she chose the Trump Trump watermelon.
Oh,
so
right,
now
right?
she might be
We
in the
got it.
crosshairs.
The Media
We got
Matters
it.
is going to publish a video
We
of
won.
her
The hippo
tomorrow
called it.
saying every slur in the book. It's over for her.
Like,
Now-
where are
now-
the Moodang N-word tweets?
Oh, jeez.
I should also clarify. I don't know if it's skin
real
fat
quick.
you test. Might
She's
just be
only 4
skin
months
muscle.
old.
No. But
Out of the way.
apparently, apparently, people were saying that the original account that Moodang uses was a Trump supporter.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if it's true. I just saw memes where it was like, "Do not search the history of Moodang," and it was like MAGA 2020 and stuff like that. Anyway, let's talk about some of the results we're seeing right now. We've got this from Robert Bortons on X, and I don't know how true or whatever. This is just stuff we're seeing. I have seen numerous reports that Republicans have flipped Guam. Exit polling suggesting that there's a major shift. We've got official data showing there's at least a 12-point swing from Democrat to Republican with still a Democrat edge. But we have this. He says, first of the day, GOP flips Guam delegate for Congress. Rep. Moylan James C. with 15,000 votes, 52%. It's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Decision Desk has their final probabilities at Trump 54% to win. The Republicans with 76% to win at the Senate and 52% to win the House. That's where we're at so far. We're going to be waiting
win-win-win
for the polls to close,
no matter what.
And the bad news is, I don't think we're going to have any real results. And
True.
With Pennsylvania extending voting hours in Cambria County to 10 p.m., that means we have to wait until at least then. It's not an insignificant county. I think it might have been 60,000
If everything
votes
goes
in 2020.
perfect.
So it's not insignificant, and it could matter. I suppose we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. The thing with Guam, I was paying a little bit of attention to that, and I didn't know that Trump flipped it. I'm not sure if he did, but my understanding is
that's
in
with the
the
president
final
conditions.
results, it swung 10 or 11 points in his direction from where it was in 2020.
But the delegate is reportedly flipping.
Oh, okay.
Let me get the official source on this. See if we can get some official reporting on if we have any news on the Guam delegate.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the Guam election?
I think it's indicative of a sea change of the feelings of the people. I mean, we were still going to have.
I don't think it matters.
I wish not, but I have a
What is
feeling that it's
Guam?
going to take.
Nobody knows. Nobody even knows where that
election to get
is.
resolved. I hope it doesn't.
Multiple months.
Yes,
I voted by mail, unfortunately, but I voted by
Where's
mail.
Guam?
And the website said as long as you get post-dated
You don't know.
by the 5th, it doesn't have to get there till the 15th of November. And like Tim was
Wow,
saying
I
earlier,
thought
the
you were
Supreme Court's
joking
challenging
this
that.
morning.
No, it's super legit. And I mean, I was shocked when I read it. I'm like, well, at least maybe my vote will get counted. But it's almost to the point where like I'd rather
Wow.
the Supreme Court overturn that and say like, hey, if you didn't get it in by the 5th, just disregard.
Yeah,
Get your votes in by the 5th.
I think that's how it should be. The idea that votes can be counted after Election Day, and by counted, I mean votes that are cast after Election Day could be counted. I understand having to count the ones that were already received past midnight. But the idea that someone could deliver
they're
a
already
ballot
breaking it
the
out?
next morning or the day after an election and have that count is insane. And by the way, if you don't believe in that, then you actually don't believe in the quote-unquote sanctity of democracy. You just want a one-party system where the Democrats win all the time. Because if you really believe that there's a civic duty to vote, then people should be motivated to get their vote in on time instead of allowing the slacker vote, which always happens to go for the Democrat to be counted at the last second.
I do want to point out we have this from Guam PDN, Pacific Daily News. Moylan wins re-election. Republicans retake legislature in unofficial tally. So it does look like it's not a flip. I don't believe. I believe that was they say he will remain Guam's delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, while the 30th Guam legislature will see the return of a Republican majority come January based on unofficial election results tallied up by the Guam Election Commission. So it's not that the delegate was already the delegate, but they flipped the legislature in Guam. So it is a flip, but I believe it was he mischaracterized or misunderstood.
Okay.
At least it's from Pacific Daily News. So we're really trying to squeeze whatever we can out of the early election data. And
Exactly.
but as everyone knows, once Guam calls it, the rest of the country just falls in line, right?
Exactly. Well, listen, I mean, Indiana was reporting 1% in Trump's winning there. So
I only care about what Guam says.
1% vote.
Illinois and
That's it.
Indiana.
Let's call it. The Tim Cast Decision Desk has officially called it.
Indiana
We're going
is
home.
closed at 6, right?
I think it's time for Trump to call it. I think he needs to come out and announce his victory.
Dixville Notch.
That's right.
Dixville
Big
Notch.
three-
Last night
3
at
to
midnight
3.
they counted.
3-3, and this is big because in 2020 it was all 5 votes for Biden.
Also 2016 where it was all for Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
So
Oh man.
I want you. So this is a town that votes just after midnight, and there's 6 people who live there, and they all meet up to hang out, and then cast their ballots. So I mean, like, Imagine us sitting right now being like, so who are you voting for, Ian?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, Kamala. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. You should vote for Trump. It's like, no, I'm going to vote. That's okay.
And then there's
That's
20...
like Clinton, Harris.
And then at 3 a.m. there's 20,000 mail-in ballots. You're like, hold on a second. How did this happen?
We got together and they're like, it'd be funny if the three of you vote for him and the three of us vote for her. I guess the whole thing off.
Yeah, they talked about it and they're like, we don't want to be involved in this.
Hilarious.
Let me pull this up. We have this from a clip from CNN. Colin Rugg tweeted, "This is massive. I don't even want to say what this is. I want you all to hear what Chris Wallace says based on the polling data CNN is showing, this exit polling data.
In the country, I mean, in conventional terms, it would be a miracle that Kamala Harris could win with that kind of headwind, and also with a president. Remember, she was part of the administration. The Biden-Harris administration was 41% approved, 58% disapproved. This isn't even close to the 50%.
Chris Wallace is saying, based on the so if I jump to the beginning, I'll play this for you.
Said, let's look at the numbers on the mood of the country. It's a pretty dour mood in terms of the way people feel things are going in the United States. Nationally, only 7% of voters say they're enthusiastic. 19% say they're satisfied. Look at these numbers.
Ooh, I'm incredibly enthusiastic because I don't care either way.
29% angry.
I'm dissatisfied on both
of the
ends.
electorate nationally say they're dissatisfied or angry. What about
I'm not
America's
angry.
best days, we ask? Are they in the future or are they in the past? 61%
Definitely
of
in the
voters
future.
in this election across the country say America's best days are ahead of the country. 6 in 10 say so. 34% say the best days are in the past. And
I think if
finally,
Kamala wins, it ain't going to be the end of the world.
Joe Biden's approval rating, it's at 41% in these early preliminary
Hopefully
exit
I'm
poll
right about
findings. 58% of voters in this election across the country nationally disapprove of the way that the incumbent Democratic president is doing his job, Jake.
So with this early exit poll data, with the current trends that we've seen, Chris Wallace says, quote, in conventional terms, it would be a miracle that Kamala Harris could win with that kind of a headwind.
Well, what he's going to say is, it's a miracle. We found 12 million ballots.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We found just the number she needed.
When I said it might go 2 months, I'm concerned with malfeasance. But the thing about our decentralized system is a lot of states are just legit. Like, I mean, they seem like Trump could win in enough states soon enough that it doesn't matter that other states haven't reported yet.
Let's hope.
I want to get into this data as much as we can
Nothing's
because it's going to be
if Kamala
rapidly
wins.
changing. But
Kamala's
we have
just gonna win.
5 p.m. Eastern Time Edison Research data published by Reuters. We've got this on interactive polls, and this is massive news for Republicans. Voters, as of right now, via the exit poll, 53% women compared to 52% in 2020. That's an increase in women. That's bad for Republicans. However, 67% were white in 2020. They're now 71%. 13% in 2020 were black. They're now 11%. And Hispanic is down from 13 to 12. So what we are seeing is an increase in white voters, a decrease in black and Hispanic voters. That's good for Republicans. Of course, Democrats are going to come out and say, haha, it proves racism. It doesn't. But black voters tend to Democrat. Hispanic voters tend Democrat.
Numbers are different
white voters,
sometimes.
If Trump is
They
getting
can't always be
right,
the same.
Rural white conservative voters, it's a boon. I don't know how much we can extrapolate off of 4 points because it could be white liberal women. But this does reflect better for Republicans in the long run.
Yeah, I think that a lot of black people were also just personally insulted by the way Obama spoke to them. When it seemed
I was
the
personally
Democrats that there wasn't
insulted, and I
enough
was like,
enthusiasm for Kamala. It came off as very condescending.
12 years old.
"Oh, you boys need to get out there and you got to vote like I'm telling you to. And I just think that any voter is going to find that a little bit insulting and condescending to be told, like, this is your skin color, this is how you have to vote. And it doesn't necessarily make it the case that they're going to become a Trump supporter and vote for him, but it probably does make them less likely to vote for your candidate.
I think that you're probably right about like having a bit of being put off by it, but I don't think that would put them off from voting for Harris if they were actually going to vote for her.
I think
mostly
convince them, though.
I think mostly what it is just that they're not convinced that she's a good candidate. That Kamala Harris doesn't have any.
All right, let's check out.
We're
the wire
owing
for a little
1 million.
while.
But I will say that as somebody who went to the grave of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Rebbe's grave, with Donald Trump to meet a hostage family, as somebody who's watching as Hasidic bands are running through New Jersey and New York playing in Yiddish, vote for Donald Trump, I really feel like those people aren't Nazis. In fact, I feel like the people who are more prevalent in Nazi circles are all supporting the other person. They're all people who like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and want the state of Israel destroyed. And you may have noticed that
I
all of
also
the
feel
neo-Nazis,
like that.
all the people who are actual, like, stated fans of Nazis, who people were linking Trump with in 2015, 2016, they all flipped on him. And now they say he's too philo-Semitic and pro-Israel, and they actually are going the other way.
But, this is all about what both Jeremy and Dennis are talking about. When you read the Federalist Papers, most of us, when you see the founders, how far-sighted they were because of their knowledge of human nature, I always think the one thing they did not foresee, and none of their arguments touches on, is, of course, the development of mass media. And what we have been living in for 60 years, there's just no question about this, is increasing power over what's called the social imaginary, what that cloud of knowing that connects us all in a kind of moral ideal. And they have been in control of it. And the transgender issue was an absolute proof of how quickly a nonsense theory could be turned into holy writ by the power of this mass media. But it was also, in Matt's movie and a dozen other places, it was also evidence that we were beginning to strike back. And that is,
boring.
Trying to get, real polling numbers. What we found is that we can control, the dialogue of the video that we want to make, which is why I invented this solution.
Yeah, they got some problems over here, it looks like.
In Miami, and I was kind of surprised the overwhelming kind of support. Kamala
Alex
Harris
Jones, Roger Stone, and
Robbie
the
released
quartering.
his video. We released our video last Friday, and you could see those kind of genuine kind of reactions from individuals when we ask them, who are you supporting? Even here, predominantly a very red state. If there's any kind of good news in the early voting data, it's highlighting how Florida is overwhelmingly red, which is beautiful to see, as I've been describing it as kind of the last Alamo here. That will be very true, especially if Kamala Harris wins the presidency of the United States. But who knows how things will go.
I think you're wearing cowboy boots for that video too, right?
I don't know about the...
I think so.
Cowboy boots? What?
It's just so weird because I remember 4 years ago, and we were in the middle of the virus that shall not be named. We didn't see any Biden signs. We saw a lot of, like, in this house we believe, in science. In this house we believe love is love, and all those signs. But we saw no Biden signs. We saw a ton of Trump signs. And now when you're driving around, this Miami area, Fort Lauderdale area, you see a bunch of Harris signs. It's really surprising. And I didn't see, before Biden dropped out of the running, I didn't see any Biden signs. So I just find it wholly inconceivable that people are so excited for Harris when nobody chose her. Literally nobody chose her.
I don't know anybody who chose her.
That everybody hated is
Or,
the
like,
only
even wanted to
person who
vote
was
for
like,
her.
yes, she's who I'm choosing.
Well, she's highly backed by a lot of funding, like 3 times, I don't know the numbers, but a lot more than Trump's getting.
But how does being backed by funding make people enthusiastic for this
I'm just
unlikable wretch of a woman?
What Gavin McInnes said, and what, to Steph's point,
They're all
I've
liars.
seen Harris signs
They
in
know
very
what
affluent
the end goal is,
I was in a very
and
rich
it's to
neighborhood
get
in
rid of
Miami the other
us
day.
so they can have their freak-off parties as much as they want.
I was in a very rich area. in
Nobody
Key
can be
West,
bothered. They can do evil shit
and I saw
forever.
Harris signs. Like, so
That's what
only
they
when I've
want.
been in areas that have a lot of money, I've seen Harris. I haven't seen.
But even here, we're getting reports 30
They're
minutes
lizard
ago that
people.
Florida Republicans were leading in the state by a whopping 1.2 million votes. That is a crap ton of
That's a
votes.
lot.
That is
I think 4 is gonna be
I don't know if you've
red.
been to Pompano Beach around here though, but they literally are camping out or all around the voting booths over there. Of course, 150 feet away, but there's flags and Trump signs flying all over the place. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I went and I voted.
Florida's a fun
today,
place.
Personally,
Who'd you vote for?
Who do you think I voted for?
The communists.
Ron Paul.
No. I actually voted for Donald Trump 2016. Voted for him in 2020, and I voted for him once again. But the process here is different than, of course, a lot of other states. You had to, of course, show ID. Your ID got scanned. Your ID literally got verified through this kind of machine. You were given a paper ballot with a pen. You were given a receipt. You were given, of course, the ballot that you filled out, and then you, of course, put, you of course made sure your ballot got scanned. Your ballot got counted, and there was poll watchers. So it was done in a pretty effective way. There wasn't long lines, which I was kind of worried about, but no long lines at all. Just walked in, voted for everyone, and got out of there pretty quickly.
And you had to sign as well.
Yes, you have to sign that you're not lying or committing perjury or
You promise you're not lying?
That's unique.
Yes.
Well, Florida's
I forgot about that.
Florida's first rate. That's not the process in Pennsylvania, Arizona.
No,
And
their
I remember
process is
2
to
years
have
ago in
as much
Arizona, when I
fraud
went to vote
possible
there, I had to
as
wait in line
possible.
for 5 hours because the voting machines were broken, and this is a deep red area. They knew it was all Republicans voting.
Where were
And
you,
there's-
Maricopa?
Yeah, that was Maricopa in 2022 when Carrie Lake lost. And this year in Mojave County, Arizona, videos of the same exact thing happening. In Pennsylvania, on many deep red counties, there's videos of that exact thing happening. So
They're saying there was a blackout, no electricity. That's why.
yeah,
That's horrible.
there's no electricity in America.
That's crazy.
Just on election day. Election day only.
Just when it matters.
Never would have expected that to
I
happen.
did get a privilege to talk to Carrie Lake about this once, and I had a really interesting conversation with her where she was talking about how every time she tried to go to the courts to sue for, everything that went wrong in that election, she was put in front of Judge Tucci.
All right, what's going on with the Zachariah?
Location. I'll tell you here at this location, the clerk says that the line this morning stretched out of the door, that it went an hour long or so. And they actually have a small college in the area. So they said that they've been having a lot of people take advantage of Wisconsin's same-day registration and go into that table that you were just
Hey,
looking
man,
at. And
should we be
actually
allowing that?
register, in person on this election day. I'll tell you my
Should
favorite
we be
story
allowing-
is that someone said he
Like,
was
man, you-
undecided up to the moment
If you
that he
ain't
walked up
registered.
to this polling location, which is essentially a field house here in
flipped
Milwaukee
a
in a
coin.
park. He said he didn't know who he was going to decide on, so he took 2 laps around the park, hit a long walk, and finally decided he would be backing, in this case, Vice President Kamala Harris. But you mentioned
Wow.
Milwaukee is a place that we're going to be watching incredibly closely.
Yeah.
It's one that has been the focus for Democrats. Saw a lot of big visits ahead of Election Day. It's one
That dude was
that's
based,
very
though.
important to
He
them.
picked
So
him
we're
up.
gonna be watching
Oh,
these results
shit.
very closely. Unfortunately, those results might take a little bit longer to come and to be produced because of that little snafu downtown.
Shaq Brewster talking with who may be the latest late decider in the polling place where you are now. Shaq, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We are just about now 35 minutes away from polls closing in Battleground, Georgia. Not too long from now, you can see
Let's
the other
go,
states where polls close
Georgia.
at 7 p.m.
Atlanta,
Georgia is the
really.
one to watch. You've also got 7:30 poll closings in North Carolina. Ohio is interesting as well. There's a key Senate race there, and you can see the swing.
I can't wait to see what kind of problems we got.
And I'm sure you have one, as our special
All right.
coverage here of Decision 2024 continues tonight. Savannah Guthrie and Lester Holt will pick up right after a break. They are going to take you all the way to 2 a.m. Eastern
Yep.
and potentially
Okay.
beyond. I'll be there too with exit
Great.
poll data, joined by
2
Chuck
a.m.
Todd,
Eastern?
Kristen Welker, and Tom Yamas. See you in a
That'd be 1 a.m.
That's
for
good.
me.
Crashed it? Yeah, wow. Let's see what this is. I'll pause this real quick. We go to this one.
Jennifer McCormick at 39% right now. Braun with a pretty sizable margin over McCormick. It's still early though. But interesting, this.
Yeah, we got
opened up
other
a-
stuff going on too. We ain't just got
Senate,
presidential
for
stuff.
Republicans in Indiana, though, Jim Banks, he tried his hand at Senate politics, and it's seemingly going well for him tonight as well. Austin.
Yeah.
And again, I'm pulling up Allen County behind me here. This is where Fort Wayne is, Andrew. Just to illustrate some of what we're seeing in these bigger counties. So far, this is where the majority of the votes have come in. 36,000 for Braun, 34,000 for McCormick. But that's only 5% of the votes tallied so far. There's not too many.
Damn,
That doesn't mean anything then.
So far in this cycle. In fact, the only competitive one that we expect, and by the
2%?
way, I should introduce
What a
our map
fucking
of
idiot.
all the governors.
Yeah, what an
around the
asshole.
country.
God damn.
We are, of course, following North Carolina closely. That's an interesting one with Mark Robinson. We do want to bring you results as soon as polls close in North Carolina. That'll be an interesting one to watch for. The real only competitive governorship that's happening this cycle is going to be in New Hampshire. We're going to be following those results closely. That red that you see in Indiana behind me, not a shocker.
All right, Austin, thanks so much. In the meantime here, we are anticipating some type
My
of
aunt
press
lives up in
conference.
Indiana. She lives right smack dab in the middle of MAGA country.
Entirely when that's going to begin. But I want to tell you why this is happening. This is what precipitated it earlier this afternoon. Donald Trump there posting on Truth Social saying a lot of talk about massive cheating in Philadelphia. He says law enforcement coming. Now,
Been seeing a lot of cheating stories from coming out of Pennsylvania.
in Philly, Larry Krasner, are weighing in on this. Krasner says this: my response to Trump's unfounded
Stop the
allegation of
steal.
cheating in Philly's general election. He says the only talk about massive cheating has come from one of the candidates, Donald J. Trump. He says there's no factual basis whatsoever within law enforcement to support this wild
George W.
allegation.
Bush stopped the
From
steal.
Krasner.
He
Going on to
melted
say,
it.
we have invited complaints and allegations of improprieties all day. If Donald J. Trump has any facts to support his wild allegations, we want them now, right now. We are not holding our breath here. So, wanted to just make sure we got that in. We are waiting
This guy's like,
for this
"Shut
press
up."
conference to begin there in Philly. In the meantime here, let's bring into the conversation yet another one of these guests, experts, analysts.
What if nobody wins?
Joining us throughout the course of the evening to help us make sense of some of these storylines. Our
What if we
friend,
all win?
As well, former Biden campaign
If nobody wins, do we win?
and that's Rhett Buttle. He joins me.
What if a designated survivor situation happens, but they get everybody and there is no successor?
Your response and reaction to what we just brought our viewers happening in Philadelphia here. Do you think that's somewhat of a bellwether of how the night's going to go as far as rhetoric, as far as messaging?
Well, I hope so, but I think, we are expecting that, President Trump will, as he has always done, put out potentially incorrect things that are happening.
That's right.
But at this stage of the
And
game,
he's going to
it's
say
important
really
to know that
wrong,
this has been a very
violent
safe and
rhetoric.
accessible election. Everyone's votes have been very secure. America has the most safe and secure election system in the world. We saw that last cycle. And in previous cycles where the
Just
Trump
because it's the most safe doesn't mean it's
brought
safe.
forward, allegations of fraud.
Oh,
all of
people
those,
think
the
he's
vast majority
lying?
of them were struck down
Guys.
by independent judges. So we may continue to see some of this rhetoric. I don't think that it's helpful right now. We need to make sure that as polls are open, people continue to get to the polls. The most important thing is that people be able to know
What's going
that
on
their
the
vote is
Twitter?
safe and secure, and it's accessible to everyone.
So, Red, I want to talk about the Harris campaign and where the Harris campaign stands right now. Last night on CNN, a senior Harris campaign advisor, David Plouffe, said this to Aaron Burnett, that he believes they can win all 7 battlegrounds. He says they can, not that they will. He believes that, though. Is that feasible right now? Why is this race so close between Harris and Trump?
They're always
Well,
close.
look, we always knew that this would be a close election. That has been heavily predicted. The polls have been very close. But the vice president has said over and over she is asking for every American's vote, and she's leaving no stone unturned. Yesterday, she was, crossing across Pennsylvania from the top of the bottom of the state, talking to voters about her plan to lower cost and what she'll do as president of the United States to bring, down the cost of groceries, to make the cost of housing more affordable. And I think that that is a message that is really resonating, not just in Pennsylvania, but in places like Nevada and Wisconsin. And so, I think the campaign is really focused on bringing the message to working families about how they're going to make their lives better. And I think that that's why you heard David Plouffe talk about last night. All of these states are within the realm of possible.
So I want to talk also, though, about this narrative that has been front and center throughout the course of the campaign cycle. How Harris has had to redefine herself, especially in relation to President Joe Biden. Joe Biden withdrew from the ticket in July, and Harris allegedly
Withdrew from the ticket.
or did not chart her own course. Do you
Really,
see
he
any
was kicked out
Biden
and
drag
replaced.
in some of these early exit polls right now? That has been a key feature, how she would distinguish herself from Biden. We know this race is going to be decided among independents and among some of these late-breaking undecided
She can't
voters.
distinguish
Has she
herself from
done a
Biden
good enough job of
because she can't
distinguishing
even
herself
distinguish herself from a rock.
Well, look, I think the vice president is very proud
Yeah.
of the things that she accomplished as
Yeah,
part of the
I
Biden-Harris
think that she has,
administration,
actually.
which are mostly bipartisan things, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Bipartisan Chips and Sciences Act.
You think
all
not
of
so
those
much?
are investments in Americans, working families, things like roads and bridges that create jobs. But the vice president has also really talked about what is important to her, right? And so she's put plans together focused on working families and small businesses. She's made access to capital and tax credits for small employers and Main Street the hallmark of her campaign. She's focused on bringing down the cost of housing and groceries for families. Those are things that are plans and that are really unique to the vice president, I think are really identifying. And I also just think, she's been very focused on building a broad coalition. So in addition to really working to, talk to the African-American community, the youth vote community, we're really encouraged by the numbers we're seeing out of Pennsylvania with the Puerto Rican community, for example, and young voters, on college campus coming out to support the vice president. I think all of that is a really unique sign to the strength of the coalition that the vice president brings to this conversation.
So, Red, I got to ask also, because issues are front and center in this campaign, including reproductive rights and abortion here. Is the Dobbs decision...
Trump will win the election. We will see orchestrated civil war prior to January 20th. This will usher in martial law. The presidency will be handed to Kamala. Trump will not become president. Matthew Caligari.
Urban women and young women here. It seems like the Harris campaign has put...
I don't see that happening.
Into that voting
I don't see it happening.
Here. Will it matter?
Look, Dobbs is very important, and a woman's right to choose is a key part of this campaign. The vice president has been clear, but there's a broader narrative here, right? This is about freedom. Do you want a candidate that supports freedom? If so, you want to support Kamala Harris. Do you want a candidate that will take us forward and continue to grow the economy? If so, you want Kamala Harris. Do you want a candidate who's more focused on bringing the country together, reaching across the aisle with people like Liz Cheney?
Looks like it's too late.
You old fucking musty orange bitch.
Berman Supreme called it. President-elect USA. Repping the U.S. Pirate Party. Sorry, Trump and Kamala. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, you don't want him.
But also
Vermin Supreme's won.
Constituencies, right? We talk to everyone, are tired of division, and they really, really want to move forward. They want to feel joy. They want to feel optimistic about America. And I think Kamala Harris is a new generation. She's a new kind of candidate.
Yeah.
But just lastly, what else are you watching for tonight? You have such a pulse on all of this. I'm sure you're watching a lot of metrics.
Turn the
look,
stone
I
ass
think,
off.
early on in the night, we're going to see Kamala Harris doing quite well and Democrats doing right well. The reality is we will see some of the southern states be called early, and those are states that generally will be favorable to Donald Trump.
Big surprise.
Yeah.
I think it is likely that we probably
Saw it
won't
coming.
know the complete results of the election tonight. We'll have a better idea, I think, early in the morning around 5 or 6 a.m. about where Pennsylvania is headed. We have to remember that, until all the ballots are in, Pennsylvania can't start counting. And then there's several days where they can do this thing called curing of the ballot. Nevada also has rules where ballots can, still come in if they're marked by mail for 4 or 5 days. So I think, what we'll see is we'll see a strong night for the vice president in the beginning. Maybe we'll start to see some, tipping over to the Republican side. But I really think over the next few days, you'll see the vice president, as all of the ballots are coming in, begin to take the lead in states out across the West.
All right, Rhett Buttle.
I don't know. I know some Republicans that did some mail-ins.
Campaign cycle. We'll talk soon.
So we're not going to know tonight.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Have a great night.
All right, in the meantime,
It's not going to be
we
decided
do want
tonight.
to take just another quick commercial break. The results will keep coming in. We brought you some out of Kentucky. And
So there's no point. There's no point in all of this, everybody, doing all these live streams. No point in me being here.
We gotta have another fucking expert out here.
So they can try to get through those lines a little bit more quickly. One thing they feel good about. Another thing that they're feeling particularly good about tonight are the favorability numbers right now. Savannah and Leicester. The numbers, according to early exit polls, show that Kamala Harris is at 48% in terms of her favorability. Compare that to 44% for former President Trump, but notably, Joe Biden, the current president, is at 41%.
Counting down to the end of the world.
Performing the man along whom she ran in 2020, with whom she served for the last 4 years. There had been some real concerns that could have been an albatross for her, given so many Americans had indicated they thought the country was going in the wrong direction. Things we'll be watching over the course of this evening.
All right, Peter Alexander, thank you. And Garrett Hake is at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Garrett, the former president has been posting on social media today.
He has.
Already talking about widespread cheating. What is he saying?
That's right.
That's right, Lester. And his posts running contrary to the campaign's spin, their official statements at the moment.
That's right.
They came here tonight expecting to throw a party. I'm on the floor of the Palm Beach Convention Center.
I bet they did.
Absolutely massive ballroom that they have booked out, ready to throw a huge victory party, something that didn't really happen in 2016, a race that's victory surprised even Donald Trump, and of course didn't happen in 2020 when they lost. I just got off the phone with a senior Trump campaign advisor who told me they are cautiously confident
Songs
in what
that
they've
I
been
am
seeing
busy
across
right
the
now.
battleground states so far today, and that the former president is trying to run through the tape, making calls to radio stations in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, urging his
Hope
supporters
I don't
to
get
go
copyright
vote, stay in line
for that music in the background.
He's going down a lot. Something that they've always
For that
felt
country.
is better for them on the
Donald
sort of
at
the broad spectrum of
60%.
issues in this race. All of that said, the former president's social media posts seem to undermine the confidence he is projecting. Just a short time ago, posting
look at those
without
votes.
any particular evidence that we can find
Georgia.
about massive cheating, in his words, in Detroit
Massive.
and Philadelphia.
Huge.
Obviously, places where Democratic turnout is expected to be very high, and ironically, places, at least in the
Huge.
case of Detroit,
Bigly.
where he actually
They're
performed
cheating
better in
bigly.
2020 in a loss than he did in 2016 in a win. Trump has said for the duration of this campaign, and especially in its closing days, that he believes the only way he could lose is if there is some kind of cheating out across these battleground states. We'll be watching to see what else he has to say about it tonight.
That's right.
Lester?
Okay, Garrett, thank you. We want to go to battleground Pennsylvania now. NBC's Jacob Soboroff is in Philadelphia, where they've actually added 2 extra voting machines at one polling station.
2 extra
because
voting
of
machines.
Machines were provided by the
Jacob.
Kamala Harris campaign.
Were they actually?
Lester, good evening
Is that
to you.
real?
That's absolutely right. We have been here all day long. We've been watching the line at Temple University. As a matter of fact, it used to stretch all the way down to the next avenue over here. Now the line, which was about 2.5 hours long, is quickly moving inside ahead of the 8 o'clock poll closing time here at Temple University. This is one of 1,703 different election divisions all across the city of Philadelphia. That's the same jurisdiction as the county of Philadelphia, 700 polling places. About 500,000 people were expected to vote in person today. Some of those students who had been waiting 2.5 hours are quickly inside right now. As you can see, they're coming out at a pace that we haven't seen all day. After they added those 2 machines you referenced, it is, as you said, a positive sign for the Harris campaign. But of course, until all the ballots are cast and counted, we won't know that for sure, Lester.
All right, Jacob, thanks.
All right, well, we're right over here at the big board, 270. We mentioned it is the magic number tonight. That is what it will take to win the White House. Each campaign says they have multiple paths.
So it might not
to
even
get to
matter.
that magic number. So let's get back to
See how I
the
get
numbers, the
270?
big board, because this
What
is
if he
the
gets
big
300?
picture. Here's the map. The
Come on,
gray areas of the
300.
battleground states.
I don't even
and there
care,
are
really.
various ways to get to that magic number.
Yeah, and this is how we ended up at the end of
See what
election
happens.
week in 2020. As you mentioned, those battleground states, we haven't colored them in yet.
Yeah.
Biden, he won 6 of those 7 battleground states. So the easiest path for the vice president is to hold the blue wall. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If she does that, Savannah, she gets to 270, she's going to the White House. But if she's having a terrible night
Ooh, look
tonight
at this.
and there's an emergency, she
Kentucky.
doesn't win Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, the blue wall collapses.
Look at that.
She has an emergency route through the Sun Belt. If she can win Nevada, win Arizona, remember, Biden won those, keep Georgia, and flip North Carolina, she gets to 275. But if this is the path for
18
the
minutes.
Democrats, they're going to have a few heart attacks.
Well, I was
I'm
going to say
ready.
that's a much tougher path, and polls bear that out. Let's talk about the Donald Trump path.
Okay,
Let's
just
see
think
it.
about the east side. This is the easiest way to understand Trump's path. If he flips Georgia back to red, holds North Carolina, and then turns Pennsylvania red,
He wins.
he's going to the
Yeah.
White House again. But if he can't win Pennsylvania, he has to win somewhere else in the Midwest. Donald Trump tonight cannot get to the White House unless he makes a crack in the blue wall. If he wins Michigan, he holds North Carolina, he flips Georgia, he can do it with just Nevada and those 6 electoral votes. But if he can't win Michigan and the blue wall comes down to Wisconsin, he has to win down in Arizona to get those 11 electoral votes.
And that's what we're going to be doing tonight, counting up electoral
Tonight,
votes.
maybe tomorrow.
Maybe
the
tomorrow,
days ahead.
maybe next week. We shall see. Lester, let's go over to you.
You two are terribly optimistic. Thank you. Let's bring in
So if he
Kristen
loses
Welker, now
Pennsylvania and
moderator,
still
Meet
gets
the Press.
270,
Kristen, what are you looking for?
then
Some early indications
he
that suggest
wins.
one or more of those paths we
That's
just
it.
talked about are
But
real.
if neither of them have 270 and we're waiting on Pennsylvania, I don't know if that could even be a thing.
Gender gap that could be one of the big stories.
Then we ain't
of
gonna
this
know for a little
election.
while.
We've seen it in polling leading up to tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris has a significant lead with women voters. Former
What a
President
surprise.
Donald Trump has a real lead with male voters. So we'll be watching those early returns.
None of
to
these
see
numbers
how
are
that
even
bears out, to
correct
see
right
how
now
the
anyway.
split actually falls. Abortion on the ballot in 10 different states. So that
Not
will
until
be
we
notable,
start
could potentially
closing.
drive up turnout. Early bellwethers, Lester. Virginia in particular, there's a key race for Congress there. Virginia 7, Eugene Vindman running against Derek Anderson. This was a Democratic-held seat. Do Democrats continue to hold on to this seat, or do they lose it to Republicans? If they lose to Republicans, that could spell trouble for Democrats early on in the evening. And then this is a really fascinating
Ooh, we got
one,
16
Lester.
minutes.
Split ticket voters. In 1988, you had 17 states
I better get
that
some
voted
munchkins going.
opposite parties for
Give me just a
president
second.
and
I'm going to
Senate.
munch on a couple
In
chips.
2020, down to one state.
Give me a drink.
Maine. What do we see tonight? It's really been dwindling over the years.
What does that mean?
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Let's go over to Savannah now.
Poll closings are about to start in 7 o'clock Eastern time, including in the battleground of Georgia. And if you've ever wondered how we're able to call some of these races so quickly, stay put. We're going to take you inside. We'll show you how we do it right after the break.
They know the fix is in, boys. That's the reason. Yep.
Vote reliably in presidential elections, and whether they lean Dem, lean Republican. Of course, this race has always been about trying to snag some independents, because clearly Harris has her followers and Trump has his followers.
They do.
And so now you're really playing on the margins here, and it's a matter of people who just couldn't get behind Kamala Harris, who are Dems, and decided to vote for Trump, or in the reverse, just could not vote for Donald Trump and just slid over into the Harris camp. But in the middle, 4%, 5% of those independents may very well decide this tonight.
Brian, I wanted to ask you, and this is somewhat of a long-winded question, or maybe the answer will be long-winded. Let's talk about the campaigns themselves. In the last week, or maybe the last weekend, in your view, what did the Trump campaign do right, and what did the Harris campaign do right? And vice versa, what do you think they did wrong?
Well, I think both campaigns really grounded out to the end. They were in a lot of places. They kept hitting these high swing state states to try to secure votes there. I think Donald Trump actually remained somewhat disciplined down the stretch, and Kamala Harris stuck to her message points. I think those are the positives. The negatives are that if you're not a Trump fan or you're not a Harris fan, nothing they said in the last few days will change your mind.
No, I don't
Harris
think so.
didn't really get into specifics through the entire 107 days of her campaign. Donald Trump kept with the same themes that he has talked about: the economy, immigration, these other things, right through to the end. So in the last 7 days, I was waiting for something to kind of move the needle here a little bit. I didn't really see that.
It is very close, Austin.
Yeah, so Brian, we saw, and I was asking Keith about this earlier, we saw Trump making appearances in New Mexico and in Virginia. We saw Vance in New Hampshire over the weekend. We haven't seen Kamala Harris making any appearances in any of these states that we don't consider battleground
That's true.
states. What do you think they're seeing, and what do you think they're relying
She
on?
thought it was,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
bro.
I don't mean to cut everyone off here or interrupt. We're going to be doing this a lot. We do have some of these live events right now. We have some of these election officials, especially in Georgia. The Secretary of State there, Brad.
What's going on in Georgia?
Taking live. Let's just take it.
Was there. They brought in dogs, and they're doing a sweep there, so we're not concerned about anything like that. The area was fully secure.
Oh, okay. Got the bee threats.
Typically, what you saw, anywhere from
it's
20
like that
minutes
bomb
to
threat
40
bullshit.
minutes
Yeah.
range. And so, we'll just be following that precinct by precinct.
Yep.
How much later will they stay open?
Well, that's as we were just saying. If you had, they were doing their work,
So
say
didn't you
20
fucking
minutes
listen?
to 40 minutes, something like that. I think there's one that might be 50 minutes, but in that range, so less than an hour. But we'll get those to you as soon as we can.
You said experts were there and that they sniffed the areas. Is that the case for all 12 of those locations where?
And typically, I know that in Atlanta, they also just got a whole bunch of bomb threats come through, and Atlanta Police Department, they're keeping everything open. All the precincts are staying open, and they're just sending dogs around to sweep it to make sure that they're safe. But we know where it's coming from. FBI knows where it's coming from, but we want to make sure, interest of public safety, that everyone, make sure that it doesn't, slow down anyone from voting. And like I said, if you are in line at 7 p.m., you can continue to stay in line until you exercise your right to vote.
Do these seem to be coming from the same source as the earlier threats? And are they connected, do you know, to threats coming in and to other states?
We don't know that. And best
They have
we
no
can
idea.
tell, these
Yeah,
are
how can they
probably
possibly
coming
know
from
that?
the same source.
Are there any indications of threats coming into places where the ballots are being counted?
No.
How will the how will the extension of the hours impact the counting of the votes coming in to you guys?
Just a little bit slower because you have.
Well, wasn't working for some reason.
Different locations, but
There
we
we
have
go.
a backup where people can send their emails to lwctips@protonmail.com. But we covered what was going on in Pennsylvania earlier, where you saw that in Cambria County where it didn't work. The big story to me that a lot of people for some reason just skimmed over, you have a Chinese national in Michigan who voted, who asked for their ballot back.
I heard
don't
about
know
that.
why, but that's how they caught and the vote will still count. This person is not a citizen. This person will be punished for election fraud. But the vote still counts, which is very similar to what happened in the last election when we called Clark County in Nevada and said, hey, this address isn't real and this person doesn't live there. They switched the address in the middle of the night. We went to that address. It also didn't exist. And when I spoke with the registrar, I said, yeah, well, there's nothing we can do. So when people say, hey, there's no shenanigans going on, we know before we get to any of this, you're talking about media malpractice, you're talking about
There's
the weaponizing of
always
the DOJ and
shenanigans.
big tech. But make no
Everybody
mistake,
denies it.
I mean, Tim and everyone, and sorry, I don't mean to not have everyone's name, but I can't see everyone because you're in a small box. None of us think that there's zero election interference, right? No one thinks that. So is it 1%? Is it 99%?
I think it's 25.
And to me, we know that in Michigan, if you vote illegally and you're caught, your vote will still count.
Did you see?
It's enough.
Did you see James O'Keefe's video from this morning?
I did.
Where there was a voter outreach organization telling non-citizens they could vote as long as they had a tax ID number. They sent an undercover reporter to one of the locations where they talked with an official who said, "Yeah, that's fine." Then when he goes and questions them, they're like, "Get him out of here! He's screwing with us." They're screaming. They're yelling.
God! Hey, currently there are several polling locations in Georgia that are being evacuated due to bomb threats.
Yeah,
this
they're
like
hoaxes
3
too.
minutes ago.
Yep.
This is
new.
It's multiple. Yeah.
Also, wait, these are new ones?
Yeah, three minutes
there were
ago.
two.
Well, all right now I'm getting this 3 minutes ago. Nick
Yeah, I was
Sorter
just over
tweeted
on
that there were
Asmongold
several
stream,
polling
and he
locations
was
in Georgia
talking about the same thing
Georgia
over there.
being evacuated due to bomb threats, forcing voting at these locations to be suspended. So yeah.
How about California planning
County?
California
Chatham?
had planned power
How about Chatham
outages today.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a weird.
How much you want to bet that Stacey Abrams is just behind those voting booths with an acne blunt? We actually have somebody on their way to DeKalb County right now. We do. Sorry, we have someone on our way right now to that to DeKalb County right now to investigate that. And it's probably nothing. That's the challenge with doing this. Most of this is probably nothing. But
He's got storm chasers on the job.
Aren't you guys at the point where you're tired of the gaslighting to the American people?
100%.
Of God, what are you
So
saying?
much.
It wasn't the most
Both
secure.
sides.
You know what? I'm actually going to say it's
why I
not
didn't
even
vote.
close to being potentially one
Yeah, I
up
didn't
when you
vote.
have
What are you
14
gonna
states
do
with real
about
voter
it?
ID. How about that? It
No,
can't be.
absolutely. I mean, this is one of the insane things. I remember after the 2020 election, watching it go down on the show, having questions about it, and it was really when they started saying, this is the most secure and safe election that has ever happened in all of history, that I went, okay, now I know there's something going on. You can't be that hyperbolic and expect me to believe you.
Safe and effective.
But the point about not mail-in ballots, but voter ID, I mean, for as much as we as Americans are accused of being far right compared to every other Western nation, if you talk to Europeans about voting, they will look at you incredulously when you say there are people in America who oppose the idea of having to show an ID to vote. It is a very bizarre American phenomenon.
Yes, in Bangladesh, they require proof. I don't know if that's where they do a little purple ink on your thumb or they burn it into your forehead. But, you know, the point remains, they do something in Bangladesh. They do it in countries where they cut off your hand if you steal an apple.
Yeah.
And by the way...
Or vote fraudulently, maybe.
Yes. Well, it's if you just go, that's the old Mr. One-Hand voter fraud. But if you go back to the
you
tax
ain't gonna
ID
vote
number,
wrong again now, are
I
you?
was renewing my driver's license in the state of Texas, and I believe you have to go in with 2 forms of picture ID and something that proves your social security number. So I brought in a tax return, and they said, "Sorry, we can't use that because it doesn't say social security number." I said, "What?" They said, "It says tax ID number." I said, "You're the one who calls it tax ID number, you little shits. It's clearly a government document, and it's the right number of numbers. I didn't call it that. Just run it in your system, and you'll see it." And they go, "No, you can't. You just have 2 pictures. You have a passport, you have your previous license that you're renewing, and it says tax ID." I had to have a producer go to my house to get my social security card.
Wow.
You have a producer?
But that was to get your license, to driver's license?
That was to renew it, yeah.
Jeez.
If you want to go to the movies, you need an ID.
You know, I'm really concerned with digital, like the electronic voting. And you can't, obviously, Rudy Giuliani learned the hard way. Don't make claims you don't have data worth of evidence about. You can't back up 100%.
I mean, when you don't understand
Destiny
how
up
any of the
to?
policy affects you, at the end of the day, it's all just about tweets and shit. And Trump is a good tweeter, and so that's what people vote on. Yeah.
So then I guess the next question, doesn't that, it's kind of fucked up to say, doesn't that make you slightly a bit politically ineffective if you're constantly discussing policy?
No, I am owning people. That's what I go out here and do. I scream at them. And I ask them if they believe in dinosaurs. And that's why I get the
No, he owns people.
That's right. It was a good moment.
Yeah,
He's
but
just
when
better
you're
at
engaging
screaming.
with, I guess a public or a populace that's more interested in like owning the other side, I guess, and you're discussing like the reality of January 6th and going in depth on how it was an insurrection, and these people are just not connecting with it at all.
I think there's the facts and then there's your rhetorical approach as well, right? So depending on who you're engaging with, you either have to try to embarrass them or be empathetic towards them or be argumentative or be compromised. It just depends on the person, right?
That's why Trump's going to win.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. We need to get more entertaining.
I'm not even joking. I feel
Wait,
like...
why is Trump? That's why Trump's going to win. First of all, you don't know if Trump's going to win yet.
Yeah, why are people even arguing right
I went
now?
on the crypto betting site, and they said 67%.
Yeah, what are those odds at right now?
It's going down. It's going down quick.
The other direction, for sure.
You should check, see if the stake odds change throughout the night or not.
I'm gonna say 58.
Tightened up, haven't they?
Yeah. After I saw XQC put 700K, I put 20K in Kamala.
Okay, well, that literally just came from me, so be careful.
Really? Did it?
He DM'd me and he asked, and I was like, I think Kamala's got it. He's like, okay, and then he copy-pastes his bet.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, dude.
I made a bet like in exact proportion to how much money he makes and how much money I make. That's why I made my bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this water's delicious.
That's American water.
Water, all right? Yeah, I'll take it.
My American water ain't delicious. My American water is cloudy and has stuff floating in it.
Because this is like a $10,000 table.
Probably 10,000. It's 10,000 because I've sat on it so much.
Okay, there you go. Everybody wants them farts.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well, we should have Georgia coming in here.
I think it went down in value because Destiny sat on it.
No, fuck no.
I mean, that's pretty valid in this country.
The differences are way too extreme right now. That would be insane. It would be unhinged.
I don't mean somebody who supports Trump.
Oh.
That dude in the glasses kind of looks like Hassan Piker if Hassan Piker was gay.
Like a Mitt Romney conservative.
It would depend on like where their values were different, right?
Gotcha.
Like if they're like a conservative, like I'm religious and whatever, it's like okay maybe. But if they're a conservative, like we need to repeal the 19th and like all this, like you're fucking crazy. It just depends.
He doesn't want to be trapped like that commercial.
You know what's so tough? I was talking to one girl, she's a Trump supporter, like I've known her for a while. She just kept using like all the Trump buzzwords, like scamala. Scamala wants
nicknames.
to. I was just like, it was so hard to talk. I was just like, and I just stopped.
They're like it's like talking points.
Yeah.
It's they memorize all of them. It's insane.
Man, they're not original. They call me Scamaranth. Just any woman, add a scam in front of it.
I'm not gonna lie. That one does ring well.
It says something about society that we would all believe that.
And you said earlier your top issue is what, taxes?
Yeah.
I mean, she wants to make as much money as possible. I ain't mad at her.
Hell yeah. Who doesn't?
What about you? Would you date a Republican?
doesn't
Would you?
100%.
You would?
Her top issue is taxes.
Jesus.
He's got to be voting for Trump then, right?
No principles.
Not listening to the lies that
That's her business.
Kamala has been spouting.
That's your wife. And
So what? My wife doesn't have to have my political
Wait,
beliefs.
brother, what are your children going to have?
Whoa!
That's up to them. They take in both.
Unbelievable.
He likes to keep harmony in the home, it sounds like.
So if your wife was pro-slavery, you'd say, you know what, that's her right. Just own it. Bite the bullet.
I wouldn't date a girl who has pro-slavery.
I appreciate
Yeah, it depends on how hot.
Are pro-slavery?
Like, is she a 9 or is she a 10?
Not all Trump
'Cause that's the
supporters are
difference. That's the
pro-slavery, but
tipping
all
point.
pro-slavery people are probably Trump supporters. Like, I'm
I'm
put it that
actually
way.
shocked though because I feel like some of the views espoused by Trump and his ilk are so extreme to most people on the left that for you to sit across from somebody who shares those views and still be able to share a home with them and a family and like obviously her politics would probably disseminate to some degree to your kids
Can
and
we,
influence them.
can we switch seats?
Yep. Easy.
Easy?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you? Is there like think of a political faction that's like diametrically opposed to your own? Could you date somebody who heavily supported them?
Like a conservative, yeah, not a Trump supporter. There's too much. There's way too much. Because, okay, I'm gonna be really soy now, but like if you're dating like a Trump supporter, and you like what if one of your kids is like trans or some shit, and like the shit that those guys talk about, like with grooming and the education, like yeah, that would be horrible. Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Would you?
No, I don't think so. No, because I've had a lot of awkward conversations. It's very difficult because there are important issues that I don't think we necessarily have to agree on. But I think that we have to be able to converse on. I think with Trump support, this is very difficult.
All right.
The topic of like abortion comes up, and it's just like I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm having a conversation about a topic. It feels like it's
this evening. This is where it brings
Trump
us on the road to 270 right now. The early start, Donald Trump out in front
Move
with
it down.
8
Early start.
3 for
There it
Harris.
is.
Let's
alone
go.
to get that 270, but that's where we are right now.
Well, polls closed in a handful of states, and these are the ones we haven't called yet: Indiana, South Carolina, Virginia, and that
Trump takes the
important state of
lead.
Georgia. And here's how
Trump's
we're
winning
projecting
so
it right
far,
now.
guys.
Too early to call. It may come tonight, but it's not coming this exact moment. So we will continue to watch. We don't have any results yet to show you out of Georgia. It is simply too early to call. But Georgia is one of the faster states to count. So as I go over to Tom Yamos, who's starting to pull up the big board there and looking
It's
into
8-3.
some of the states that we're looking at. See, you've got Kentucky up on your map. Why
So
does that?
this is the earliest.
Kentucky.
This is the earliest data we're having so far. We have called Kentucky for former President Trump so far. I'm just trying to get a lay of the land to see, how is it looking compared to 2020. Again, a lot of that vote is still out, but we were able to make the projection as we explained to you. I also want to talk about Indiana because we're getting some vote data here. Still too early
Donald's
to call.
going
Remember,
in.
only 14% of that vote is in right now. We also have this great feature on our board where we can show you where the remaining vote is. So obviously, the bigger the bubble is around those counties, that's how many votes are still outstanding. So here in the Indianapolis region, still a ton of votes waiting there. This is a state that Republicans have really done very, very well in.
Yeah, they're gonna win it, no doubt.
If you go back here, Trump in 2020 won
Bro,
by about
he's
16
leveling up.
points. Before that, it was even higher against Hillary Clinton.
Jesus.
This is a state that Republicans are going to be safely in the win column, most likely.
Yeah, they're gonna win
We
it.
can start to get data from this
It's
Hamilton
over.
County
All right.
with 60% of the vote in. This is not a great sign for Trump right now, but again, I want to be very clear. It's only 60% of the vote in.
It's
And
rigged.
this is what I'm talking about. 52%.
It's rigged, 100%. Trump ain't winning, it's rigged.
Right now, with about 49, 50% of the vote. There's about 1,300 vote difference right now. Again, still very early, but this is the first data we're getting tonight, so we're kind of parsing what we can so far. There are big areas like South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, who is the mayor there, obviously, where Notre Dame is as well, and the big city of Indianapolis, Evansville, there's a university down there. A lot of if we look at the map in 2020, these are mostly rural counties.
Trump
red
came
counties
out
where
ahead
Trump can
last
really
time.
run up the vote. But again, in some of these smaller counties, he wants to be 60, 70% to make sure he can overcome what he's going to get in Indianapolis. But still very early tonight, Savannah. We're going to get a lot of data as it's coming in, hot and heavy throughout the night. But right now, still very, very early.
This is when we get the tea leaves out. This is the tea leaves portion of the night. And, you know, you have a red state. You know that Indiana's that Trump will prevail most likely. Same thing with Kentucky. But sometimes we can look into those counties and particularly the suburbs, because that is where we are starting to see a trend. Did I read your mind? You're giving me that
Savannah,
look.
we're mind melding because I'm looking at Hamilton County and I'm going, okay, people at home are probably going, wait a second, Hamilton County, was I supposed to know about that one? Was that one of the big ones? Here's why it's so interesting. It's because of the tea leaves, Savannah, and because of the trend lines as well, right? This is a county where Republican margins have been shrinking over time. Democrats have been making inroads. It is a suburban county. It is something similar that we see in places like Georgia, right? In some of these places in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. And that is what's so interesting about Hamilton. Let's not over-index on it. It's early, so that's why we're interested in it, because it's at least some data that's coming into us. But that's part of the story here.
You can see the importance of some of these places by how many times
Stop
the
the
candidates
count.
have visited Donald Trump. 8 trips to Georgia, 7 for Kamala Harris.
That's a lot.
We cover it every night, them in this state and that state, but when you see it laid out, it's quite amazing.
It really is. And when you
Yeah,
talk
he's
about
got
the state of
Georgia.
Georgia, we'll be looking at those Atlanta suburbs. What types of margins do we see there? That's how President Biden wound up eking out a
president
victory.
vote.
And then the excerpt.
Nah,
that's
I doubt
where
it.
Donald Trump does well. Forsyth, Cherokee. Can he run up the margins there? If he's going to win the state of Georgia, he'll do it in those territories.
Let's take it a step out,
I'm gonna
because
move
these
this up.
are themes that will run throughout the night.
I think this would be
Kamala
better
Harris
so you
has
guys
to
can
get the
see
turnout
these.
up in the cities. She has
Indiana.
to
Oh,
drive
yeah.
the margins even higher in the suburbs, and why she has to make up for the rural
Yeah, we
vote
saw that coming.
is expected for Donald Trump, and he has been very good in past elections at finding these voters.
Next
who
poll
aren't
closing in
traditional voters who
25
come to
minutes.
vote for the first time.
Absolutely. That's where the ground game
Damn.
is so significant. And tonight will be, to some extent, a test not only of their campaigns, but of the ground games. Was the Trump campaign able to get out some of those voters who don't typically go out and vote? One note about Pennsylvania, one of
Guys,
the biggest
it's
states
over.
we're going to be watching throughout the course of
Yep.
the day.
Over.
Joe Biden
Yep.
won it, not just by running up
Trump
the
won.
margin in the Philadelphia county,
Yep.
but in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Won the
Those
whole thing.
collar counties that
Associated
make all
Press.
the difference. Hallie and I are both in Pennsylvania.
Trump for president.
County in the House,
Or
folks.
Trump is the president, I mean.
Okay, so let me disengage myself from the chair here because we can start to get into some of the vote breaks here in Georgia. And here's what's really interesting. We've talked about
Let me see
people
what's
who
happening.
Projected
identify as
winners,
independent.
Kamala Harris.
Absolutely right, a voter that Vice
Give me a
President Harris really
break.
extended an olive branch to. She wanted to
Yeah,
win a vote.
right.
Based on our
Get outta
exit
here.
It is Donald Trump winning
Donald at
independents,
19 already?
nearly a double-digit margin over Vice President Harris in the state of Georgia. Here's your grain of salt caveat. These are early numbers. They may shift a little bit throughout the night, but this is really interesting here. And if you're wondering, well, how does this compare to 2020? Let me pull that up here, because he is overperforming. Donald Trump is overperforming his numbers
Overperforming.
with independent voters in Georgia this cycle
shit.
than he did last cycle by a significant margin, by
All
about
right.
10 points as well. The other piece of this, too, let's look at the gender gap in Georgia. The
Let's see
gender
it.
gap. It exists here, folks. We are seeing, and we'll pull up this board in a second here, Kamala Harris winning with women, Donald Trump winning with
Men
with
W.
men. And I'll tell you, as I
Wow.
walk back over
Look
to
at
the table
that,
here, that is something
55%.
else we'll be watching here throughout the night. She's got to do really well with women. He wants to do really well with men. And in my conversations with campaign sources just in the last couple of hours, they're looking at that as well.
We've called this election perhaps the battle of the sexes election, so we'll see how
True.
that plays out. I think we've got a winner to announce.
Battle of the
Key
sexes.
projection
That pretty
in
much is what it is.
Indiana. And no surprise,
It's a Mr. Beast
Donald
video,
Trump
but on
will win that state
national
again.
scale.
Here's the data that's just coming in. See if we can get some numbers. And you now know, because we've taken you inside
There
the
it is.
decision desk, how is it that we can project this with just 15% of the vote counted? It is because we are confident that the margin is sufficient to make that call.
It's rigged.
Let's go to the 270.
They made
They're
it
going to
the
make
fuck
Kamala
up.
win.
We start to fill in some of the gray. Indiana
Damn.
red for.
They're tricking you by
Donald Trump.
showing you that Trump is winning.
Tom
Too
Yamas
big
is
to
actually
rig.
looking at Florida. So Florida had a poll close, or is it about to poll close?
Yeah, they've closed. We have some voting
Yes,
data.
okay.
And we have an Osceola County. I wanted to show this, why this is important. So here in Florida, we have the I-4 corridor, right? And this is kind of the central part of the state. It cuts right through here. When you think about Florida, you can think about it in 3 parts. The Panhandle, it's very red. That's Trump country in a lot of those counties. South Florida, usually reliably Democratic, but Republicans have made some inroads. And it's this I-4 corridor that is really the swing region. It's also the area where you find a large number of Puerto Rican voters as well.
Yeah.
So when we come into Osceola, I wanted to highlight this because we have 71% of the vote in. This is usually a reliably blue county for Democrats.
Damn.
Again, not all of the vote is in.
I
It is
will
still
say
early,
Trump
but
is
you can see
overperforming in
underperforming
every
in
category
what is
compared to
historically a
where
blue
he was
county
at
for
in
Democrats.
2020.
56 for Joe
Have you
Biden
guys
in
noticed that?
2020. 51 for Harris right now with 71% of the vote in.
I think it's rigged.
It's still very early.
Trump ain't winning it. It's
Trump did
rigged.
well in a county that he usually does very well in, Volusia County on the East Coast here. 56% in 2020 with 70% of the vote in.
Project
He's now at
2025.
59%. So he's overperforming. Again, still a lot of vote out.
They're going to prevent your 12-year-old daughters from getting
Where the vote is
abortions.
going, but those are good signs for the president. Listen, Florida has been trending red. Trump won it in 2016. He won it in 2020. Actually, in 2016, when that political earthquake happened, it really happened once we started calling Florida. 30 electoral votes. The map gets very, very hard for Trump if he doesn't win Florida. Without
sure.
Florida,
He's gonna
his
win.
sort of strategy in the blue wall and
He's
everywhere else
100%
kind of
gonna win Florida.
collapses.
Everybody
He needed
knows
this in
that.
the win column. Still very early right now, statewide. Only 18% of the vote is in. We
Yep.
can find out where that remaining vote is tonight. So you can see in the major cities, Tampa, we're still going to find out how that hurricane, both Milton and Helene, affected
Yep.
voters there. Pinellas County, just to the west of that, a big swing county. Orlando, that's a hub for Democrats. Duval County, we actually have some vote in Duval County.
Why are we even talking about Florida right now?
Ron DeSantis
Way
is
too
always
early to
the
call Florida.
representative. This has been a swing county. Biden won it, but Trump won it in 2016.
Yep.
She's doing, look, Harris is doing pretty well. In 2020, Biden was at 51.
That's
She's
less
now
than
at
1%,
50%.
though.
66% of the vote is still out. This
Refresh
is a county
Google.
that Republicans had hoped to flip. We're going to have to wait and see. But
Yeah,
again,
good point.
that vote's trickling in, but we can start to kind of read those tea leaves, Savannah and Lester, and kind of see where the vote's going. Again, still very early, but this is going to be this has to be a win for Trump. If not, it's going to be a very long night for Republicans.
And a rapid pace there as well in the counting. We're seeing that in some places tonight.
We anticipate, of course, as Tom's just saying, that Florida is a good state for Donald Trump. It is also the first test of Trump's strength. So that is why all of those areas that Tom is just laying out, these are, again, very early data so far, but significant nonetheless, because it will help us once we get in more understand how strong he's
Fun
running.
fact alert for those who remember the hanging
Fun
chads.
fact
in
alert.
2000.
What?
Florida, in the wake of that debacle, has some of the
Got some actual
fastest
facts?
vote counting in the country. So I tell you, you will not be waiting for Florida for very long tonight. They really get that vote counted very, very quickly. They have the modern machines. They're allowed to pre-process.
Trump knows he is losing Pennsylvania, so the election lies begin.
Seeing anything unexpected, though?
So far, I do think the
That's what somebody on X says. I do not say that.
especially in what we saw
Even though it is kind of true. I think he's about to start the election lies. Who knows if they're even lies? We'll see.
I'll tell you another trend as we're talking about Florida. Osceola County has a large Puerto Rican population, the biggest of any county, I believe.
Oh, we're still on the Puerto Ricans, huh? Nobody cares.
Campaign officials and those close to the campaign that they feel like that is a part of the Latino population that they can really try to move the needle with here after those
Because of the Tony Hinchcliffe.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
let's go over to Tom on that. I should say the polls close at
I don't
8
think they
o'clock in the
cared that
morning, but
much.
You get some information for 7 o'clock poll close timings. I think that's part of the confusion here. But we're talking about this Osceola County. It's a third
Split
Puerto
poll
Rican.
close, right, yeah.
Right. So it's interesting because you have the Latinos down in Miami-Dade. I know. Go ahead and give your shout out. Miami-Dade is the greatest.
Just the greatest county, greatest
Yes,
people. I mean, I could keep going.
But obviously, this isn't, Latinos come from different backgrounds and have different voting patterns here.
Yeah, it is not monolithic. Just like really every minority group, it is not monolithic. The Puerto Ricans have tended to voted more Democratic. Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans have trended lately more towards the Republican side. But I do want to remind you, too, during the Obama years, Obama was able to pull back some of that Cuban American vote. It has changed in recent years. We're getting more data. As you mentioned, Florida's very fast in putting in their data out. So we were talking about Osceola again, their big Puerto Rican population. The same with Orange. This is Orlando. This is a big Democratic stronghold here. Again, 60% in. Look, I don't want to draw too many inferences from this, but you have Biden at 61. Harris is at 58. You could say she's sort of underperforming, but I also want to say it's only 60% in. A bigger number that's coming in that I think is more important, guys, I want to talk about right now is Broward County. This is just north of Miami-Dade. Think about Fort Lauderdale, think about Sunrise, all those areas and those big cities that have been growing over the years, especially post-pandemic. This needs to be a place where Democrats
he's been building
really
up
drive
power.
up the vote, right? Hillary Clinton won big here, 66%. Biden did the same at 64.
Oh, shit.
Tonight, Harris is at 60. Again, I always point to this
Trump
number.
going
All the
back
votes
up
not
on
in,
Polymarket?
But if you were to
Yeah,
call
I
it
bet.
right now, she is slightly underperforming. We'll wait for that other vote to come in. Guys,
All right,
over to you.
Tom, thanks very much. We are just minutes away from polls closing in Ohio and
Let's
battleground North
go.
Carolina. We're standing by.
Let's
to get some new
go,
polls in the race
Ohio.
for the White House. Stay with us.
All right.
Ohio gonna be for Trump?
All right,
You
let me
think?
see. Georgia's blue. Who would have said? Who thought that? Who said that?
Nah,
Damn,
ain't no
I thought I
way.
was stupid for saying that. Wait, what? Oh
What?
wow.
Oh, okay.
About the quote unquote, look, ladies and gentlemen, Time magazine wrote an article claiming that Democrats engaged in a conspiracy with CEOs and unions to fortify the election to stop Trump from winning. Their words, not mine. The article is easily searchable. By all means, you go read it.
And I think
Crazy. Insanity. Who knew?
Relay out what I was saying earlier. In part, it's a humiliation ritual. Like, look, we just did this in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could get away with.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Look what we're able to do.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Literally,
So,
we can
we'll
see
how this
everything they're
goes.
doing.
Certainly.
We know it all, and they're just like, oh, no, we're not. No, we're not.
DeKalb County response to
You're stupid. We've got
You're a conspiracy
wise
theorist.
gentleman joining us
Look
on
at
the
that
show.
suit, dude. Look at
That
dapper.
is a very sharp suit.
No,
Yeah.
it's a dapper.
You got good angles on your body there, Clavin.
Mary will be stepping out for a moment. Thanks for hanging out, Mary. She'll be back. And we have Andrew Clavin.
Gonna sit in Mary's gross warm seat.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome to the show.
How are you?
Dressed to impress.
You want to introduce yourself for those that don't know you?
Sorry, I am the host of the Andrew Clavin Show on the Daily Wire. I'm, Ben Shapiro's competitor, and I was there from the beginning, and I'm a novelist and a screenwriter as well.
Thanks for hanging out. What have you seen so far? What do you think's going on?
So far, it's all vibes. You know, we've seen Trump win the states we know he's going to win. We've seen Kamala win Vermont, which would have been a shock if Trump had won it. But you know, the vibes are good. Vibes are not meaningless. I think no one knows anything, and anybody who's talking about it as if they know something is not telling the truth. But
we called it for Trump already.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
He won Indiana. There's no way he could lose this thing. Yeah.
But you know, the big thing is actually people sitting here and the Daily Wire have changed the game. There's just no question about it. The left's domination of the cultural apparatus of what's called the social imaginary, the things we think are true and the things we think are ethical, has been so complete until about 4 or 5 years ago.
I think that's right.
As the Daily Wire took off, as shows like this took off, we've been able to debunk their lies at a speed that we've never achieved before.
Are you a bourbon drinker?
You know, I am, but I'm going to be here till 2 in the morning. So
Okay.
If I start drinking now, I'll just pitch forward.
Because we have this wonderful bottle of old Rip Van Winkle.
Look at that. Oh, gosh.
And
you're tempting me here.
Well, I just wanted to say, based on what you're saying too, is how many election night shows are going to crack open a bottle of bourbon?
That's right.
Exactly. Have a good time.
Talk about vibes. Talk about different vibes.
We're either going to want it or we're going to need it.
That's right.
We were just talking. I do agree with the vibes. I keep thinking if everything's on the table and legit, Trump's got this by a landslide.
Right.
But I am in sort of an echo chamber
I don't
too.
think it's gonna be a
so there's
landslide.
that, but those
No
are
way.
what I'm feeling. But then we just pull up this Time magazine article about
Get
the
out of your
shadow
echo
campaign
chamber,
to
Ian.
fortify the election of 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
The cabal of CEOs and
I'm a little bit wary of these things. I mean, first of all, the last election was done under such insane circumstances that all kinds of things were possible that aren't possible now. The Republicans have upped their game. They deserve some credit for upping their game and keeping the election tight. And I don't believe, most elections are run by local folks who are actually good people, who actually are out there volunteering their time to do what they're doing. And so I'm not as worried as a lot of conservatives are about that. I think I think we're going to see the will of the people, and I think that unfortunately, sometimes the will of the people, in democracy, we get what they deserve, which is a terrible thing sometimes. But I think that it really depends on whether or not whether or not the information weight has shifted enough so that we can expose them to enough people fast enough. So when Donald Trump comes out and he says there'll be a bloodbath in the car industry if I'm not elected, and George Stephanopoulos on ABC says, Trump is calling for death and murder if he's not elected, we now have the ability to strike back. It takes a
That
beat.
guy is a
It
piece
doesn't
of
happen
shit,
right away, but it
garbage
takes a
liar.
beat. And the question is,
You
how
should-
far is
you
that
should see
spread?
what he
how
said
how effective
today.
is it? It is going to get more and more effective.
I'm
They're
gonna
try and
react to it
stop
for
They're gonna
tomorrow,
lose.
'cause it was
We will
insane.
win eventually. The question is whether we win tonight.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's another point to be made here. This didn't originate with me. I wish I could take credit for it. But democracy is in many ways just ruled by mass media when you have one set of people controlling all the programming that people see, where they get their ethos from. What you were just discussing earlier, this idea that everything we were told about what's moral or good or true or beautiful has just come from a handful of corporations who have similar interests.
The
who are
magic
very
picture
aligned
box
ideologically.
lies to you.
You end up in a position where even if the election is free and fair in the sense that you don't have shenanigans going on with ballot harvesting, it almost doesn't matter because people are pushed in a specific direction by the media. This is this idea of like manufactured consensus, which, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Noam Chomsky, but he's not wrong about that. There was a really brilliant moment with him. I think, was it on PBS? This was a very long time ago, but he was having an argument with a female journalist, and they were asking him, are you alleging that I am pretending to have the opinions that I have for this job? And he said, no, I believe you're sincere in your beliefs, but my point is you would not have
out a
Hold
little
up.
bit. Jose, stand by with
Well,
us. We're moments
maybe we
away
get more,
now
more
from
stuff.
another round of poll closings.
Just moments
in big
away.
States at stake, including that former
Jesus.
battleground, Ohio, and one of the newest battlegrounds, North Carolina.
Whoa.
We are moments away from the polls closing in
I'm seeing a lot of red.
states, including battleground North Carolina.
President Trump has won this state twice.
We're going to win North Carolina. We're going to defeat Kamala Harris.
But this year,
North Carolina, we will win.
Kamala Harris is making a serious run for its
Uh,
16 electoral
What's the TLDR
college
of the
votes.
election right now?
North Carolina.
People
It
think
all
Trump's going to
comes
win.
down to this.
Plus two major wild cards. Hurricane Helene.
People thought Trump was gonna win last time, too.
Part of the state. And the Trump-supported
We saw how that went.
governor.
Now to the scandal that's rocked the governor's race in North Carolina and could have national implications.
A possible drag.
If only J6 was successful, you know what I
We
mean?
are standing by for the first vote count and new exit poll information for the Tar Heel state as our decision desk gets ready to make new calls on the road
We're going to get on the
270.
Google again. Let me see what the Google says.
So that sets us up for
It's still
nice
at
to meet
19.
Sam Brock, hard-hit Asheville, North Carolina. This was a part of Western Carolina that were really hurt by Hurricane Helene. And you're in Asheville now. What are you seeing there?
Uh-oh. Oh.
Sure, Savannah. So where we are right now in Buncombe County, which is the home of Asheville, certainly this is one of the most directly impacted areas by the storm. They're starting to pack up now.
Yeah.
Just about an hour or two earlier, there was large applause
Holy
here because they reached
shit.
1,000
Trump gonna
people
win
voting
this?
in person here at this precinct. And what's so interesting about this particular location,
I think Trump's got it.
intended to be the voting site. In fact, the church that was supposed to be had helicopters delivering supplies, which is why they had to shift it. It's one of about 17 different
Senate's
locations in this area,
39-28.
Savannah, that had to shake things up. And as I talked to residents today, they basically told me they had a lot of confidence that the communication was good. They were able to find their location. And in Buncombe County alone, you had 116,000 people early voting and then 25,000 more today. These were record numbers in terms of just the overall presence. And the western part of the state, Savannah, and this is really what I want
brutal.
to drive home,
This is a lot.
outperformed the rest of North Carolina.
I'm sweating, man. I've been sweating for like 30 minutes.
Trump's doing his acceptance
58%, but then
speech?
there were 11 different counties that exceeded 60% before people even came on election day. And I say all of this as you see cases
Is Trump live right now?
over my shoulder, right? People are still
I'm surprised he's not if he
Just to
isn't.
give you a snapshot of what's going on the ground right now. People don't have potable water. You're staying at hotels where families are still displaced and they are just wondering when are they going to get their loans for their businesses? When will their employees be able to have stability? These are all the things that are weighing on folks' mind as they're still voting. Now, we talked about North Carolina as a wild card, as it projects strength in terms of some of the turnout here in the rural communities. You also have a scenario where women, 52% versus 41% for men. There was a big gap so far in early voting of women who are voting, and the conversations
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
having, many of them tell me that they do think abortion is front and center for them.
Duh.
We'll see how that plays out here in
It's
the
a
hours to
huge
come.
mistake
All
for them
right,
to
Sam Brock in Asheville, North Carolina,
bro.
part of the region that has just been through so much, and yet so many people came
If
out
Trump
to
had
exercise
locked
their
that
right to
down-
vote. I want to go over to Tom Yamas because this is the
Oh.
battleground in
It wouldn't even have been
2020 that
close.
Donald Trump actually won, and he wants to try to hold on to it.
Savannah was the only one that he won in 2020, but it was his closest margin of victory. Let's take a look at North Carolina right now, and I'll take you back to elections past. So as we just mentioned, Trump wins here, but barely, right?
Ooh,
He won in
VA.
2016. He had a higher
VA
margin
for
there.
Kamala
We go back to
Harris.
Romney. I want to go all the way back to
Yeah, that
Obama's
sounds
first
about
race.
right.
Obama won
West
North Carolina,
Virginia?
right?
I don't
But
know.
Since then, Republicans have been
Is that
able
one
to
gonna be
flip
for
the
Trump?
state, but their margins have come down just slightly. I spoke
Yeah.
with Governor Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, who told me this is going to be their year. So how do they turn out the vote out, and how do they flip North Carolina from red to blue? The three places they have to do it. The first one is Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. This is a majority-minority county, right? Jose was talking about the Latino voters. You have about 16% in
Okay.
Mecklenburg
So there's not
County.
a lot of white
about
people there.
30% black voters
Okay.
there. They have to drive out those voters. The second place, this is the
All right,
population
next
center here.
poll's coming
This is
up
the
soon.
Research Triangle. The
They're gonna
capital
close it
Raleigh.
early?
You have schools like NC State and Raleigh.
Or it's
Just
gonna be
next
late.
door
I
in
can
Durham,
see
you
it
have
being
Duke.
late.
And then right next door to that in Orange County, you have UNC Chapel Hill. And finally, the Triad. A lot of people, if you don't know North Carolina very well, this is
I
sort
don't
of
even know
forgotten
where it
metro
is.
area. You have places like Greensboro and High Point, Winston-Salem. It's
probably
along
above
with those
South
historically
Carolina,
black
right?
universities. These are the areas, guys, where they have to run up the vote.
It's starting to get a little bit exciting to me.
See how red it is.
It
And
is?
here's the
Okay.
issue. It's one of the most rural battleground states. So Trump has to run up that rural
context
vote.
clues.
And then you were just talking to Sam Brock about the
He's
issue
smart.
of hurricanes. Those are the hurricane counties right there. A lot
Trump's
of them
62?
are Trump country, with the exception of Asheville, Buncombe, where you have Appalachian State over here, where Boone is. Those are Trump country. Hopefully those people are going to go out and vote.
Keeps
for him.
going
That's
back
what
up.
they need. Back to you guys over there.
All right, Tom, then the Democrats have put on quite the ground game there in North Carolina to try and
There's a
flip
countdown.
that state in their direction, which would make their path considerably easier.
A chance to start fresh.
10 seconds till we get the next one.
Moment that brightens your day.
Who's gonna win it?
Deserves the best start.
Place your bets.
Uh-oh.
I'm calling
We gonna get back to
Kamala.
it. Election alert.
It's Kamala.
And welcome back to our NBC News election coverage. It's 7:30 in the East. We've got some new results to show you. West Virginia, Donald Trump is the projected winner in West
Country
Virginia with 4
roads.
electoral votes. Here's where it puts us on the road to 270. Donald Trump out in front with
Oh,
23
boy.
to 3 for Kamala Harris.
Polls just closed in a handful of states. Here are ones that we cannot
Ooh.
call yet. Ohio and the battleground of North Carolina, which we've been talking about. Here's our projection at this hour. Too early to call. Just not
good.
ready.
Great projection,
to release
guys.
Any information about that yet. Georgia is
North
also
Carolina, too early to call.
closed about a half
Wait,
hour there now.
58%
And we do have
Donald?
a projection. This has to do with the United States Senate.
58%
West Virginia, the winner
Donald?
is Jim Justice, as expected. He will
Ooh.
go to the Senate. This is a pickup for Republicans. This was a
Wow.
long time held
Republicans
seat by
winning the Senate,
Senator
too.
Joe Manchin, who was a Democrat, then an independent, but still caucused
Holy
with
shit.
the Democrats. Well, now the Republicans have picked up one Senate seat. As I turn to the table here, and Kristen, just so people
Bro,
understand,
his
right
name
now,
just
Democrats
Jim
hold a very
Justice?
narrow
Of course he
lead
won.
in the Senate.
That's not
but
even
they're
fair.
looking to, the Republicans are looking to flip that tonight. They need a net pickup of 2.
You can't name
seats.
yourself
They just got
that.
one.
They just got one, so it is significant. We are looking at, and this was expected,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, Governor Jim Justice winning that seat. So they now turn to the state of Montana. They turn to the state of Ohio. Sherrod Brown looking for a 4th term there. He has gotten a pretty
score changed to
fierce
23?
challenge
Yeah, I saw
from Trump-backed former
We
car
gone and seen
dealer
it.
Bernie
We
Moreno.
synced
So
it.
we'll see how that pans out. But one of the things, just zooming out a little bit, a lot of these Senate races have gotten a lot closer in recent weeks. Democrats who felt somewhat comfortable as we've gotten closer to Election Day have seen that margin really
What
narrow.
scenarios do you
Again,
think
this
could
brings us
possibly
back
lead to
this
civil
discussion
war?
of split
Civil
ticket
war?
voters in 1988. 17
civil
states
war.
had different
talking
people
I think we're too
for
stupid to have an
president
actual
versus
civil
Senate.
war now.
That was down to one state last
Or
year,
not
the
stupid
state of
enough.
Maine, and Susan Collins won, but the state went for Joe Biden. So we'll have to watch that
One
very
or the
closely,
other.
But again, we were expecting that result out of West Virginia.
Ticket splitting has become more rare in the Trump era. However, it's making a
Yeah,
comeback. in
people.
some of
That's a
these
good
Senate
point.
races
People
where
are too
people
fat.
Might vote for a different party
That
for
too.
We
president
can't have
than
civil
they
wars
do for
anymore.
the Senate.
That's what
Everybody's
everything
too
we watch.
fat now.
And Hallie, you
I think that
doing
fits
some more
into the being
activity
too stupid
on,
part.
North Carolina.
That's right. So now that North Carolina polls have closed, I want to talk you through some of what we're seeing from these exit polls numbers. And it is interesting here, right? First, we're going to
Songs
take a
to
look at the
quit.
non-white vote in North Carolina. These are the black
Quit.
voters and Latino voters that Tom was talking about in some of those key counties in North Carolina. As expected, Vice President Harris is winning non-white voters based on these early exit poll
73%.
numbers. But take a look at Donald
How
Trump.
do they know
He's got
that?
a 25% slice of the pie.
Where was
Let
he
me
at
show you the
before?
comparison. He
He's
is
leveling up.
outperforming where he was 4 years ago with non-white voters in North Carolina. He was at 19% in 2020. However, 2 things are also true here. Let me show you
What are
white
they?
voters here, and we can take a look at the comparison here. You can see that it is former President Trump winning with white voters at
I hope Lily
61%,
Tang wins her
Kamala Harris
election.
at 39%. But again, take a look at the comparisons to 2020. She is actually outperforming where President Biden was back in 2020. She is doing better with white voters in North Carolina.
All right.
So you might look at that and you might go, as we take a
What
walk
the
back
fuck?
to the desk here, you might go, okay, well, those 2 things, do they balance out? Not really, because white voters make up a larger share of the electorate in North Carolina than non-white voters. So she might be willing to make that trade, essentially.
All right, Hallie, thanks. I want to go back over to Tom.
Now
you've
it's
got
Twitter
some
be
more
looking.
in Florida, but before you get into that, just to be clear, there's 2 poll closing times in the state of Florida.
Yeah, it's what we call a split poll closing. So on the eastern portion of the state, we have data coming in because the polls have closed there. We can tell you about the data. In some of the further parts of the panhandle, they haven't closed just yet, so we won't be giving you that data just yet. We'll probably wait another 30 minutes. I want to
Trump
show you
stocks
something
going
that's,
through the roof?
that's somewhat surprising. It may surprise you if you watch presidential elections and you follow election nights like this
About the
one.
same.
So Donald Trump right now with 73% of the vote in is up 55% in Miami-Dade County. Again, this is where
Damn.
Democrats find their votes
Bro,
in the
what
state
the
of Florida.
fuck?
Biden won Miami-Dade County by 53. They've now flipped
And that's
those
at
numbers.
73.
This is pretty astonishing when you think where Hillary Clinton was in 2016. 63%, 53. Now tonight, 55. Again, there's
Wow.
still 73% of the vote left. This shouldn't be a complete shocker because Governor Ron DeSantis won Miami-Dade 2 years ago by about 11 points, which was a surprise at the time.
God.
But this shows how Republicans are expanding the map and how Florida is becoming more and more red. I do want to show you some potential good news.
40-29 for the Senate.
What is
if
it?
they're watching tonight.
What is it?
So we're watching some of the vote come in Georgia. Remember I told you more than 50% of the vote from Georgia is going to come around
Yeah.
the Atlanta metro region.
Big surprise.
Let's take a look at some of these counties around Atlanta. 74%.
It's looking to me like Florida's going to turn red.
Biden was at 61. So this means she's overperforming
That's
the exact counties where she needs
Bro,
to
Trump
find
is
those votes.
done.
Let's look at another
It's
county
over.
here.
It's still early. Still way too early.
Just get in. Rockdale County, this is another big one. She's at 75%.
Trump's cooked.
Biden was at 69. So she's overperforming right now in some of these counties in the Atlanta metro region. Again, guys, this is where she has to drive up her vote. If she can expand the map, scale the Democratic vote there, they can.
The reason why there's so many Democrats is because it's tropical.
Years ago, any votes they can find in that Atlanta region is going to help them, guys.
All right, Tom, thank you so much.
It's
We've
over.
got guests over
Democrats like to lay out on the beach, which, you know, cool.
They're thinking of some of these
I like to do that too.
starting to see some themes come out. We've got Cornell Belcher. We've
They
got
don't
Laura
like
Goddard.
harsh weather.
What you think about what
Unlike
Tom just talked about? You had
masochists like myself.
where it's potentially a big victory in that county. Signs perhaps that that outreach to the Hispanic vote is working for Donald Trump, and yet in Georgia you're starting to see some of that suburban vote really being ramped up for Kamala Harris.
No, I think that's right. Look, Florida is. I think Democrats are going to look back at how we've not invested in Florida since the campaign I worked on, the Obama campaign. We've not invested and worked Florida well. And Florida's like a country. It's really big, expensive state. I think we've taken those resources and we've moved them more to battleground states like Georgia.
Tallahassee, I know that place because of Zombieland.
Difference, but Florida, you know, it's a state that Democrats did not invest a lot of money in, did not run a lot of advertising in.
Yeah, and do shit.
And it shows.
Let me bring in Mark Lauder, Director of Strategic Communications in the Trump 2020 re-election campaign, former spokesperson for Vice President Pence. Mark, give us your view as we wait for a call in North Carolina.
I think
What is the
Republicans are going to
Harris
take
camp
the Senate.
Right now thinking?
Right now, they're looking at turnout, I think. And really for both sides, it's going to be all about turnout. Do you get your voters out? I've seen some, I've heard anecdotally from some of my colleagues on the campaign that turnout is not where it needs to be.
68%
in the
North
urban
Carolina.
areas for Kamala Harris. It's overperforming.
Still way too early, though. Still way too early.
The hurricane impacted areas. So I think that's a good sign for President Trump. We're going to have to see how that plays out. Another thing I'm watching, and I know Tom alluded to it with Miami-Dade.
Trump is
but I
fucked.
also looked at Hillsborough County, Tampa Bay in Florida. It was both.
I think Trump's going to lose. I think Kamala's going to win. Hold on, I got to switch. Let's go, Kamala.
Actually, I did some campaigning there for this particular election as well. Mark and Cornell, thank you. We'll be back early and often as we go along here.
And we will take a break here. I think we're going to come back with more on the make or break state of Pennsylvania as the polls get ready to
2%
close
Trump,
there.
it's over. Yep, that's right. 2% in. Let me see where we're at. I'll do a refresh just in case.
Ohio looking red so far. Wait. this
me
is
if Trump
over.
wins. Like, absolutely, it'd be better.
In the
However,
clips.
What would be better for like the country? I really can't say. That's why I didn't want to vote. Yeah. Here we go. Let's get to it. Trump, we're going to find out.
We're back with our election night coverage and with Tom Yamas at the big board talking about the road to 270, waiting for North Carolina right now. The polls closed there. But how important is that to either candidate in terms of making their path to 270 easier or tougher?
Yeah, let's start with former President Trump because he really needs to hold North
Trump
Carolina.
is 65%
It was the only
on
battleground state he
Polymarket?
won in 2020.
No way.
So let's give him North Carolina. If he holds North Carolina, he flips Georgia and Pennsylvania. He gets to 270. That's his easiest path. But
Wow.
if he can't win North Carolina, his whole map changes. And why do I say that? Because he can no longer win just 3 states. He has to win 4. He can do it by winning Pennsylvania and Georgia and keeping the blue wall, or I should say tearing down the blue wall, Michigan and Wisconsin. If he can't go there, he has to go
There's going to be
down
something
the wall.
unprecedented happen.
Arizona, that puts him over the top. But again, without North Carolina, for his scenario, he needs 4 states.
Harris has put a lot of money and time and people on the ground in North Carolina. What does it do for her?
Well, look, if she wins these 16 electoral votes, it eases some pressure off her, right? Because her easiest path is the blue wall. If she can win Pennsylvania and North Carolina, look how close she is. She only needs 9 more
Mexico
electoral
builds
votes.
the wall,
Pretty
idiot.
much any other state with the exception
we build the
of
wall,
Nevada
Mexico
gets
pays
her there
for it.
if she's able to win there. So if she can
You
take
remember?
North Carolina, the Trump team gets much more nervous and the Democrats become much more optimistic.
Come on, what are the
because she's
results,
won
though?
Out east, if she can win in the Midwest and pick off a state
GA
out
and
west or
NC.
hold it, she's going to be the president.
66.
is a big part of it, and our
Already at
correspondent Gil Brewster is in
66%.
Milwaukee with some breaking news, and it's a possible issue with absentee ballot counting. Hey, Shaq, what do you know?
Uh-oh.
Hi there, Savannah. I want to first start with what we're seeing at these polling locations because locations
Damn.
are open for about
Ohio.
another hour. I want to let you go inside. I can't go inside and report, so I'll let our camera go inside there now where we've seen a steady flow of people. At this location, there was a line that went on for more than an hour this morning. You see things have slowed down a bit. The reports from around the state is that the vote process is going smoothly, but where we are seeing hiccups is with the vote counting. We just learned from the clerk in Milwaukee downtown where they are counting all of the absentee ballots and early votes at once that the city of Milwaukee had to restart the processing or counting of those absentee ballots. They say an observer saw that
It's rigged. It's rigged against Trump. Has to be. Only reason they're having issues.
Closed on them, and after going through with the bipartisan team and making sure that nothing was tampered with, the city, out of an abundance of caution, decided to restart counting all of those absentee ballots. What this means is that as we expect results from this battleground state of Wisconsin, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. The clerk said in the past that they weren't expecting results from this city to come until after midnight Central Time. We now believe that timeline has shifted 2 to 3 hours later into the night. There's more than 100,000 ballots.
Yeah, let's just disqualify them both and get Jill Stein in there.
The vote is still ongoing right now, but be prepared to wait as those results come in later tonight, guys.
All right, Shaq Brewster in Milwaukee. We're used to waiting for Milwaukee until the wee hours of the night. I want to go back to the table here. Hallie, you've been looking at some of the exit polls. I think you've got some North Carolina information and some interesting results.
So there's some conventional wisdom here, and then there's some data that flips the conventional wisdom on its head. So let's talk about that, specifically as it relates to these age groups. We know, right, the Biden coalition in 2020 that propelled him to the White House involved young voters, right? And for our purposes, young is 18 to 29. In North Carolina, and I want to show you here, you can see that for older voters, and I'm talking senior vote here, former President Trump won those older voters. That is not unexpected. His campaign has long thought that he would do well with seniors. But here's what's interesting. Look at Vice President Harris. She's got 47% of the senior vote. She's doing better than President Biden did with seniors in 2020 in North Carolina. So she is
That's because they were the same age.
Then you look at
Yeah, they were the same age, and they were like, "This guy is retarded."
Vice President Harris would have a slight lead, and I would say this is very close.
Jesus, 68 on Polymarket.
Oh my God! But still interesting. But again, look at 48% for former President Trump. He is outperforming among young voters in North Carolina. So you have that kind of conventional wisdom. They're overall sort of winning the groups, at least to a degree that we thought they'd win. But each of them are overperforming on the sort of flip end of that.
All right, well, Savannah Sellers is here to talk about a huge role that the youth vote could play in the outcome of this election. What have you been seeing? You've been
Still
tracking a lot of the
23-3
polls leading up to tonight.
Yeah, I absolutely have. And first, I want to dig in a little further on North Carolina and what Hallie just said, because if we
North
dig even
Carolina.
deeper in and we talk about gender in that under 30,
Ooh.
it's similar to the trends that we've been discussing. Trump has improved what he
Trump is
did with
fucked.
young men tonight. 60% in our NBC
It's
News
done.
exit poll there say they support him. That is up from 42% that voted for him in
Yep.
2020. Whereas with Harris, she's performing even better than Biden did with women. 65%
Wow, what a
saying that they
surprise.
support Harris in this exit poll.
I wonder
and
why.
58% actually
Is that
supported
just North
Biden in
Carolina,
the vote.
or is that a national
That's just
poll?
North Carolina.
Okay.
That's our North Carolina exit polling tonight.
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina is really interesting to me because I've been talking with college Democrat and Republican presidents on campuses there.
Yeah.
But the college Democrats were so organized in this state. Like, what they did on these campuses was really amazing. They lobbied the state to have more polling places on campuses. They even had it be made that the student ID could be an acceptable form of ID on several campuses, which was not the case prior. We're also seeing this kind of play out to be right what we're seeing with that young men appeal for Trump seems to be working in some places.
Yeah,
I'm
duh.
interested to
He
see
was
if
on
that
Joe
continues
Rogan.
throughout the night. We heard Gotti
Come
mention
on.
like those podcast appearances earlier in the night.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, Logan
Uh-huh.
Paul, things like that.
Logan
This
Paul,
seems
that's
to be
right.
where he is gaining that ground. I'm interested to see if it
Cool.
continues in other battlegrounds.
And just underscoring how important the young vote is, the Harris campaign tonight touting the fact that they have Paul Rudd, for example, out trying to energize college voters
Nobody
in
gives a fuck
Pennsylvania.
about celebrities,
Jennifer
bro.
Garner as well.
Keep
It
him in line.
matters, but
Keep
not
him-
really.
Stay
Yes.
in line. This,
Mark Cuban is FaceTiming
Exactly.
voters
Yeah.
in a 4-hour line at UNC
Exactly,
Chapel Hill
and it
right now.
speaks to how close this race continues to be as these results come in. On the other hand, you have the Trump campaign saying, hey, we're seeing good turnout in Philadelphia, yes, in the Trump areas. We'll have to see how that actually bears out when we start to get results in Philadelphia. But it does speak to the fact that there's a real focus on this epicenter and on young voters.
And when we talk about young men in particular, and to the point that you're making here at the table,
On just a second. What was this?
Election is the gender gap. It's the battle of the sexes election, and whether you want to say it's young men or senior
that's
women,
right.
or it's men and women. If Trump turns out more men, he wins. If Kamala Harris turns out more women, she does. It's kind of as simple as that.
No doubt about it. And what's so fascinating is that the Trump campaign tried this sort of unusual, unconventional tactic to get out the vote, which was to outsource it to Elon Musk, to other outside groups. And they were quite bullish heading into tonight, saying, look, we feel good about this decision.
And remember, the Harris campaign was concerned about black men as well.
That's
I mean, they brought in President Obama to make the case. Any evidence right now how that appeal has translated into votes tonight?
well, that's one of the things that she has talked about on the campaign trail. I sat down with the vice president not too long ago, and she feels like she needed to earn every single one of those black male votes just as much as Joe Biden would have. That's why you saw her, when we talked about podcasts, doing like an NBA podcast, a football podcast. Sure, she did call her daddy to try to reach out to those young women. That's the name of course, that very popular podcast with women. But she also was trying to extend an olive branch to men. I would just say this. Two things are true. Right? Kamala Harris, let me say it this way. Donald Trump is doing better with men based on public polling right now than Kamala Harris is doing with women, though that gap exists.
Ooh,
But
polls
also
closing in
remember that
Pennsylvania.
historically, women have turned out more than men in every election dating back to 1980.
Here we go,
So
man.
That is going to be one of the big key factors into tonight.
And that's why that moment with former President Obama was so significant when he called on them not to stay at home.
All right. Well, we're just a few minutes away
I
now
don't know
from a
if that
big
really moves
batch
the needle.
of poll closings at 8 o'clock
There's
Eastern
nothing
Time,
yet.
including the one that everybody's been watching, Pennsylvania. And we'll be right back.
Uh-oh. Oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. Damn, it's already been an hour.
This is
didn't
the
even
one that
fucking
is
realize
rigged.
This shit. God damn. Damn. because people are stupid. You have no idea how stupid people are.
True. Asmongold doesn't even really know. He just knows more than you.
There are people that never think about politics until they open up the ballot box and they see, oh, who is it this time?
On the 8 o'clock hour here in the East, you are looking at vote counting centers across
let's
the country
see.
in this historic election.
Some polls have closed. In some places, people are still voting.
They are indeed. And we're about 6 minutes to the next poll closing, where we'll get our first look at the real vote count from the biggest battleground of all, Pennsylvania, which we've been talking about, states that have been moving quickly.
We are moments away from the
25
polls
cockroaches. Yeah, you guys can join the Twitter community.
And the District of Columbia.
Join the Discord.
171 electoral votes up for grabs in the biggest haul of the night.
The haul.
Florida, with its 30 electoral votes, could be one of the
Let's
first
see it.
big calls of the evening.
All right, who's it gonna be?
Results from what may be the most important prize this election, Pennsylvania.
We love Pennsylvania.
We need some of that Pennsylvania.
Down to the Keystone State.
Pennsylvania is extremely crucial.
If Vice President Harris
It's extremely
loses the
crucial.
state,
We gotta win it.
her path to 270 narrows significantly.
We're going to win Pennsylvania.
So, Pennsylvania, are you ready to make your voices heard?
We're standing by for the first vote count and new exit poll information from this critical
Were they not heard already?
as our decision desk gets ready to make
All right.
calls on the road to 270.
Let's see it.
All right,
It's getting
ready for
called in
Pennsylvania. NBC's
4
Stephanie
minutes.
Gosk is in Philadelphia. Stephanie, this is where the Harris campaign really needs to ramp up those turnout numbers. What are you seeing?
4 to
Yeah, they really do. Well, it's
80%.
calming down here in Northeast
Wow.
Philadelphia. This is kind of a working class,
See?
A Donald blowout.
See? What did I friggin' tell ya?
But the big questions
Holy
about
crap.
how long is it going to take to call the state of Pennsylvania?
Mhm.
4 years ago, it took until Saturday. I was on the phone with the former
It'll take probably
Secretary of the
5-10 minutes.
Commonwealth talking about the challenges they faced back then. 2.6 million
Was that
mail-in
COVID?
ballots. That was what slowed the process down. And it was a new process for people in this state. 4 years later, they haven't changed the laws, but things are a bit better. There are fewer mail-in ballots.
Trump's ahead by
just under
1.6
2
million votes.
They have new machines to process
Wow.
them, and more people.
That's a lot of
The
votes.
optimistic outlook
Yeah,
from
he's
election
ahead
officials we have
in the
spoken
popular
to
vote
is
by
that
over
the
a million
majority of
people.
those mail-in ballots
Wow.
won't be fully
See how long it
processed
stays like
until
that.
Wednesday night
Yep.
into Thursday morning, and if this
Oh my
race
God.
is as tight as it was 4 years ago when Joe Biden
Keep
won
in
by
mind,
about
California- yeah,
80,000
no,
votes,
California is gonna
those
be
mail-in
massive.
ballots will be crucial
And there's
to
no
make the
shot
call
Trump
here, so
wins
we're still
California,
talking days,
right?
Savannah.
Yeah, and in some
But
of the
what if?
jurisdictions like Philadelphia,
But
they
what
already
if?
have election workers who are prepared to work all night and count all night, so perhaps it goes a little bit quicker.
All right, keep
we'll
that in
check
mind.
back with you a bunch. We have got Tom
New
Yamas
York,
over
yep.
at the big board, and you're still getting vote in from Georgia and North Carolina, two big pieces of the puzzle.
2 minutes
I
left.
want to talk about Georgia right now because North Carolina, there's still only about 2% of 2%.
If Trump can manage to get California, it's over.
I think what is happening here when we talk about Kamala Harris and her chances, she's overperforming Biden in some of these counties around the Atlanta
Oh.
metro area. I'm going to move the map over this way
Oh.
because I'm going to bounce around. Here on this side, the right side, this is where Biden was at 2020.
But it doesn't really
Here's where
matter, though,
Harris is
right?
Tonight, 76% in. You can see she's overperforming
Yeah.
there. We come to this other county, Clayton County. Again, these are the suburbs of Atlanta, those ring counties around Atlanta. 84% for Biden, 85% for her, so she's holding that high water mark.
That's a whole lot of red
Rockdale, look at this.
for her to be winning by that
69%
much.
75% tonight for Harris. They're looking at these numbers tonight, and again, there's still a lot
Ooh,
of vote
Trump
out.
is
But they're
done.
looking at these numbers tonight, and they're telling themselves.
Yep,
this is
Trump
kind of
lost the
how
election.
they
It's
want
rigged.
For the rest of Georgia throughout the night, only 25% of the vote is in. Trump is way on top, but again, 25% of the vote is in. Remember, we can show you guys where the vote is out. These giant bubbles. The bigger the bubble,
Yeah,
that's
see?
how many votes still have to be counted. So you can see a lot of the rural counties. A lot of them are coming
Yep.
in. There's still some in the rural county that are out, but the big area, remember, 50% of the vote is going to come around the Atlanta metro region. Let's also talk about Pennsylvania, guys, because we're getting close to getting some information in Pennsylvania.
Let's
and
see it.
remember, this 2020, Joe Biden wins the state. It is going to be the keystone state and the key to the election tonight. Trump won it in 2016. The difference, about 40,000 votes.
That's really
in
close.
2020, he wins
That
by
is
about
so
80,000 votes.
close.
Biden does. The interesting that has happened, and we've learned a lot
Refresh
about
the map.
Philadelphia, the counties around Philadelphia, places like Chester, places like Montgomery
Ohio-
County.
oh,
Those people
shit.
we know call it Munco. We'll talk to Hallie about that, as well as
Oh, shit.
Kristen Welker as well. Delaware County,
Uh-oh.
Delco, and Philadelphia County. This area right here, this makes up about 30% of the vote for Pennsylvania. We're going to be watching what happens here. What's interesting that happened here in 2020, so Biden actually underperformed Clinton, but he overperformed in those suburbs. So we'll be watching what happens there. You also have these swing counties here, the Lehigh Valley, Monroe County, part of the Poconos, Northampton, and Lehigh. Lots of Hispanics there. We're going to see what happens, and we are so honored to have both Kristen and Hallie, people who know about Wawa. They know about Eagles fans. They know about steaks. Come on. How good is Wawa?
Phillies. Wawa's the best.
Always.
But Tommy, you forgot to ask them cheesesteaks, wit or wit out?
Wit.
Okay.
Whiz wit out, babe.
Okay.
Whiz wit out.
All right. Well, we have a lot of time just to do Philly
What are they
talk.
talking
We
about?
won't leave Pittsburgh out, but we got we're coming up on a poll close
Yeah,
here.
21 seconds
All right,
until
let's see
the top of the hour.
Pennsylvania.
Poll closing. We're going to hear from about 17 states here.
It's about to happen.
At the top of the hour, and there's our election alert as we stand by, and the drama building now because as we've been talking about, we're going to see Pennsylvania. Those are the other states that the poll closings are about to occur in fact about 1 second, and we'll be able to get some characterizations for you here in just a moment. We'll look at those 8 o'clock poll closings. Here's an NBC News projection. State of Florida, NBC News projects
Of course,
that
it's
Donald
going to be
Trump will
Donald.
win Florida and
Yep.
take its 30
100%.
electoral votes. The state of Massachusetts, Kamala Harris, the projected winner.
Yeah, but that was
votes.
nobody expected that. They were like 70% blue or some shit at first.
Electoral votes there. In the state of Maryland, NBC News
Well, they just won red.
showing the Kamala Harris
So Florida's red.
We move on to the state of Missouri. NBC
Missouri's
News
red.
Donald Trump is the victor in Missouri.
Ooh,
when all the
wow.
votes are counted
Alabama.
here, but
Alabama's red.
That will also go to Donald Trump. State of
Oklahoma's red.
Be projected
Refresh
to go
Texas.
to
Give me a
Donald
minute.
Trump. And
Damn.
in D.C., District
DC's
of Columbia,
blue,
3
of course.
votes. Mistake, NBC News projects that Kamala Harris.
These are just
will win there.
projections.
So where does it leave
But
us
like
now?
they're pretty good
270?
projections.
There it is, 90 for Trump right now.
90 to 27.
270, of course, the magic number and the keys to the White House.
But we await calls in those
We're getting close.
battlegrounds. And
We're about a third of the way there.
standing states just as polls closed at 8 o'clock. We will wait for New Jersey, Illinois, Connecticut, and of course Pennsylvania as well. Let's show you what we can right now in Pennsylvania. No surprise here. It is too early to call. North Carolina, same story.
Nobody
They do count
knows.
fast there, but
Let me
not
see what
fast
the other
enough to call
information
it.
is.
It's still too early.
Refresh
It
map?
causes
Okay.
5% of the
I'm
vote
doing it.
and in Georgia, we're seeing a lot more of the vote, but still too early to make a projection. Let's go to Tom, who's starting to look at some of the numbers.
It is
here, and I see
45-13 right now.
which is a potential bellwether,
Damn.
something that might give us some indication about how this night might go.
Yeah, and it's a state that we can look at to see how the suburbs are going to perform across the country. I know a lot of you guys know the D.C. area very well. 30% of the vote is going to come from these northern suburbs. It's a
Or
good
wait, no,
look
it is
at
90
all
to 27, or is that
comparisons
projections?
with suburban women.
Which
So
one's projections? Is 90 to 27 real?
William County, it looks like Harris is slightly down with 75% of the vote in. This one stood out to me. 95% of the vote is in Loudoun County right now.
Does this keep
Biden was
refreshing?
at
Okay.
61%. Harris is down
Okay.
at 56%. Again, there's a difference of about
35 to
35,000 votes. 95% is in, and we can actually
Oh.
Pennsylvania.
the vote is left. Only about 3,600 votes
3%
remain
for
in Loudoun
Trump.
County. So she's underperforming
Texas
a little
is
bit
green?
there. As we keep going here, Fairfax
8%.
County, 45% in. She's at 68%. Let's see how Biden was doing there. 69. About
There ain't no
the
way
same.
Texas is
Look
gonna be
what's interesting
blue.
That's happening in Virginia.
Ain't no
Virginia
way.
Beach. This is a swing county. Trump won it in 2016. Biden was able to flip it. Tonight, Trump is on top, but only about 20% of the vote is in. A lot of the western part of the state, as we know, is going to be more rural. Some of that coal mining country, it's going to resemble West Virginia. We have some of the vote in a county like over here, Wise County. This is a good Trump barometer. He's at 78%. He was at 80% in 2020, but 41% of the vote is out.
95.
He's underperforming slightly. I guess the thing that sticks out to
Jesus.
me, which it's too early to know if it's a
Texas?
red flag, but Loudoun
Sorry.
County, again,
It is way too early to know about Texas.
votes in Virginia. Not that Virginia is in danger for Democrats
Here we go.
because they were able to run up the score in 2020.
Texas
but
blue so
Trump in
far, yeah.
2016 got close. He got within 5 points. A number like this, it's going to worry them a little bit. But I know you guys know much more about that area than I do.
Well, actually, we are honored to have a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia with us, Chuck Todd. So, I mean, you look at that, you know those suburban collar counties around Washington, D.C. very well. Is that
Georgia,
a
North
warning
Carolina,
light
Pennsylvania
if Kamala Harris does
projected
not
Donald
perform
Trump.
as well as Biden did in some of those suburban exurban counties?
It could be if we're going to see that if it's moving. You know,
New
Virginia is
Hampshire
sort of the gateway now to the
projected
north, rather
Harris.
than being, I always joke, it's sort of seceded from the Confederacy, right? It is the
Wait,
one
what?
southern state that has been consistently
Okay.
a Democratic state, not even a swing state anymore. So if that is consistent, yes. One thing I've learned, though, with the Northern Virginia vote, you may have 95% of the vote in, that 5% can account for a lot
Democrats
more
compromised
vote than
Virginia.
people realize. So, and there is a sense, so that's a wait and see. Look, the bigger thing that I've taken away so far is we're in the middle, we've been in the middle of a
Check
political
poly
realignment
market?
for a decade.
Okay,
and
I
every
will
one
right
of these
now.
presidential elections, we're like, hey, look at this. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump's
70%
of his
Holy
electorate this time
shit.
is much different.
Ain't looking good for XQC.
And I think we're
He
seeing
about to lose a lot of money.
on ethnicity
Lot of
and
money.
geographically. So it looks like that Donald Trump's going to be stronger in the Southeast. Why? Because he is doing better with Hispanics.
That's right.
Yep.
And there is a larger population of Hispanics in the
27
Southeast
to
and the
90?
Southwest than any other part of this country. The exit polls
Oh,
indicate
this
that
one's
she is going to
behind.
do better with older white
Okay.
women.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Indiana's not going to.
But that one said 95 just then.
Trump's underperforming about a point or two in almost even in the rural counties. Indiana's a very white state. That's a tea leaf.
Yeah,
I just throw it out there. It's a tea leaf.
where
They
are
obviously
going?
border.
Where those voters go?
No, that she's performing a couple of points better. So clearly
And
there
that's why
are
you
some
think it's the
older
older-
whites, and we could really see this country divided
Yep.
by regions where she's stronger in the north because she's improving with white voters.
Yep.
And he's stronger in the south because he's improving with voters of color, in particular Hispanic voters. We're not seeing
Texas
as much
is red now?
evidence
Let me see.
among African American voters, but
I'm checking
definitely
right now.
Hispanic voters. It's not just Florida. I think
It shows it's still blue.
Georgia,
Nationally.
we're seeing it as well.
Well, we're seeing it nationally too. When you look at some of the numbers here, he is
Uh-oh.
plus 10 specifically with Latino.
Nah, Texas is gonna be
men,
red.
According to our exit poll,
There ain't no
nationally,
way.
a demographic group that Joe Biden was plus 23 with 4 years ago. So it
Jesus.
is definitely a shift, and it is definitely
It's massive.
one of the headlines that we're watching as we're seeing these exit
Ban
polls
that guy?
come.
Yeah, I
And
know.
we see that. I mean, the Latino vote is not just concentrated in the Southwest.
That's exactly right.
It's not just the Southeast. It's also in Pennsylvania. There's a huge Latino population in Pennsylvania.
We have been talking about the ground game quite a bit. It's been heavily focused in Pennsylvania on trying to energize Latinos on both sides. Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump really focusing on that in places like Allentown, in places like Reading, Pennsylvania, trying to make sure that they are getting them out
That's
to
in
vote
Pennsylvania.
and flipping them if
Kamala
necessary.
Harris is
Let's not forget Kamala Harris
78%?
wrapped up her campaign last night
Uh-oh.
in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia.
Oh,
showing once again
geez.
demonstrating the importance of that state, as we are going to find out here in the hours to come and perhaps days.
Only
And Kelly, you
4%
got
in
some
though?
more
Yeah,
from your
true.
exit polls.
You know, it's interesting. Chuck's talking about the graceful removal from the chair. Thank you all for bearing with me. Chuck's talking about the realignment here and where people are sort of politically. One of the things we're watching on that front is this idea of independent voters. We know that they are going to be potentially a crucial voting bloc here. Vice President Harris had made overtures to this group in the closing weeks of her campaign, really trying to win them over, to get them over to her side. Look at how they're breaking nationally here. She is winning independent voters nationally, 51%, Donald Trump 44%.
Not a surprise.
Here's the thing. Nationally is not how you win or lose the White House. You win
Yeah.
the White House in the battleground states. And look at the state of states, Pennsylvania, right? The most key battleground this year. In Pennsylvania, it's the opposite. It's former President Trump who is actually leading with independents.
Oh,
over
shit,
Vice
it's
President
over.
Harris.
It's
It
done.
is really
If he
important
wins that,
to
it's
see where the
done.
margins could be really close here. You can see it here. He's at 50%. She's at 44%.
And yeah,
Again,
Trump is
that's in
still ahead with the
Pennsylvania.
popular
so you might
vote.
ask, okay, well, how does that
Yeah,
compare to how
that's
he
That's
was 4
crazy.
years
that
ago?
is nuts.
Overperforming generally with independents now in Pennsylvania. You see in 2020, 44%.
doing all right.
He's doing a bit better now in 2024, 50%. And Savannah, Lester, Chuck, Chris, and I'll toss it back to you at the table. This could be really interesting as we watch this develop throughout the course of the night, not just in Pennsylvania, but in some of these other key battlegrounds as well, like Michigan and Wisconsin, which we'll get to later.
Actually, I think Chuck wanted to weigh in.
No, I just think we are seeing something else happen, which is you have a country that's really sour about our politics, sour about the direction of the country, and we now have fewer people identifying with the two major parties, according to our exit poll. It's a huge development. Independents are the fastest growing flock. Now, it's very rational. If you don't like the direction of the country, you don't like what's happening, and you think there's a threat to democracy, do you have a lot of faith in the two major parties? But
Probably not.
The lowest share of major parties
I think both of them are threats to
identifying with two major
democracy.
parties in at least 4 elections. It means these independent
One of them
voters
lies about it being democracy, and the other one just wants to get rid of it.
Now? Okay, let me see it.
We are keeping a sharp eye on the state of Georgia. We can show you where things stand. We just had a change of characterization here. Our
Trump's down now.
Trump's down a lot, 3% almost.
To call. You can see
37% with Georgia.
Vote difference
Texas is
between the
red.
two, with
Let me see.
37% of the vote in, but again, the NBC
It still shows Texas is blue.
You got to refresh, my man.
Georgia.
We've got a lot of contributors lined up to talk to you tonight. We've got Senator Claire McCaskill, I believe, over at our Insider's desk. And Senator, I wonder what you thought about that. What some are seeing is something of an alarm bell. This Loudoun County, suburban Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, where it seems that Kamala Harris is underperforming. And as you well know, the
I think he forgot that was up on the screen. He's watching OBS.
key to her victory.
Yeah, listen, this is the witching hour. You know, this is
the witching hour.
It is very early.
Ooh,
we have
Texas
exit
red
polls,
now.
And by the way, if exit polls were
Yep,
correct,
there
I
goes
think
Texas.
John Kerry would have been president, and Hillary Clinton would have been president. So I think we've got to take all of that with a big giant grain of salt and wait for the actual numbers to come in, because as we all know, these come in from different places, typically
Maryland,
0%.
Kamala wins already.
Locations. So I think she's going to be fine in the suburbs.
What?
I think, and I don't think the exit polls will actually reflect accurately what will happen with independent voters. I'm not saying she's going to dominate independent voters, but I'll be very surprised if there aren't a whole lot of women that call themselves independents that don't vote for Donald Trump.
At what point in all this do you begin to let out a sigh of relief here?
Well,
probably,
listen, I think depending on what
I'll just be okay when it's over. Everybody can quit talking about it.
2 states, then I can breathe again. If she does not, then obviously Pennsylvania becomes even bigger.
Yeah.
And don't sleep on Nevada. I think that may be the closest
Where's
margin
Pennsylvania?
in this race. I think
5%. Kamala Harris, bro, is blowing Donald Trump the fuck out.
To 2,000 votes separating the two candidates.
Yeah,
look at that.
Saw that coming.
We're waiting polls close there in less than an hour. Nevada and Arizona, those big western battlegrounds, but we do not expect results there, frankly, for days. So I guess Senator McCaskill is going to be holding her breath for a very, very long time. We've got Sarah Fagan.
It's only
here,
5%. Yep, true.
Republican
That is true. It is only 5%.
We are reading
As much farming.
We thought Florida.
What are you looking at? What are you noticing?
We like to have a little bit of fun.
And how do you see this shaking out?
So if you look at Florida, you look at Virginia, Donald Trump is running about 4 points better than he did in 2020. But then contrast Georgia and North Carolina, where I should caveat that less of the vote is in.
Yeah.
He's running 1 point ahead in Georgia.
Right.
He's running a little behind in North Carolina, where he did in 2020. And that says to me perhaps that the Harris GOTV effort is quite strong, that she's pulling her votes out in places where the campaign organized. So she's holding that margin closer.
And the GOTV, for those of you just joining us on Political Nerd Fest, get out the vote, the ground game. When we're talking about it, you know, this is about when you say.
Well, we got like 3-4 hours until we really know
hold you by the hand and take you to the polls.
what it's going to be like.
Is the key to any successful campaign.
Absolutely, and you have the Harris campaign touting the fact that, for example, they knocked on 3 million doors over the weekends. It winds up being numbers, though, until people actually go to the polls and vote. And I do think, just bouncing off something that Chuck said earlier, it's just to zoom out for a moment. Remember that one of the biggest issues of this campaign was change. What people really want is change. And so what you saw in both of their closing arguments was an attempt to argue they're the change candidate. And so what we are seeing, for example, with
Pennsylvania, bro, like Trump is, he is way behind.
The person who winds up winning this race will be the person who ultimately voters say that's the change candidate.
Yeah, we saw that coming. Rigged.
It's complicated.
Rigged against him.
Former president, so there's a certain incumbency
Check Fox News, they're dropping bombs.
And there's certain incumbency
I don't know
there.
about that.
Something baked into Donald Trump's.
Let's not talk about bombs when we just had some bomb threat stuff.
In the White House for 4 years. Same thing for Vice President Harris as you're looking at the popularity or favorability rating for President Biden, which is low. And so the question, is that going to be a drag on how she does? To your point on the get out the vote effort, this is why early vote was critical for both of these campaigns, with some 79 million people voting early. Better to
Bro,
bank
can you
those
please stop
votes.
yelling
What if
Trump as
somebody
fuck?
gets sick?
Every
What if
time you do,
somebody's,
my
kid has
dad
to stay
flips
out
the
of
fuck
school or
out.
whatever?
I don't
Get
want him to
those
die.
votes in now to get them locked and loaded.
Let me just change the conversation just for a moment, because we do have another call to make, and it's an NBC News projection in the state of South Carolina. South Carolina will go to Donald Trump. All the votes.
All right.
And here's where the breakdown right now that Donald Trump, again, the projected winner. 24% of the vote in there, a vote difference of about 104,000. But again,
it's
Donald
over.
Trump will pick up South Carolina. Here's where it leaves us.
Wait, guys,
is
it really
99-27.
Front with 99. Kamala Harris,
27 versus. Oh my God.
He's landsliding so far, but we'll see the blue states coming soon. Man, he's winning all of them right now. But it might be on purpose. I don't know much about how the elections are timed.
Savannah, what seems to be calming nerves down the street at Mar-a-Lago is what they're seeing out of Georgia right now, a state you were just discussing, where their key to victory was essentially blowing the doors off in rural turnout and improving their margins among minority voters, Latino voters, black voters. The campaign is seeing, in the same exit polls we're looking at, improvement among black voters.
He left us.
Black men who the Trump campaign
Damn.
has spent heavily for months
When we needed him most.
to try to win over even just a few percentage points, the kind of thing that could make a difference in a state decided by fewer than 12.
31-42 in the Senate.
The other thing that I think has accrued to Trump's favor in Georgia is the resumption of unity among Georgia
Democrats about to take the minority in the Senate.
governor there after 2020. Trump and Kemp made amends, although they rarely appeared together on the campaign trail. The two singing from the same hymnal in the race's closing weeks, along with a lot of these other Trump candidates, could be helpful to Trump in that state.
All right, Garrett, we have a call to make. This is North Carolina, the governor's race there. Josh Stein, the Democrat.
Oh, here we go. What? Didn't see that coming.